It's 8:30, so I'm gonna call this meeting of the Grafton Finance Committee to order. We'll be operating under the governor's order for remote meetings during this pandemic. We have 7 members of the Finance Committee here ready to go. We also have our Director of Finance, and I think I see our Town Administrator here. Welcome, along with our Assistant Sue. So our first appointment isn't set until 8:45, so there's a couple of things I'd like to cover, if it's okay with the committee. Later on at the end of the meeting, we are going to interview 3 applicants for the vacancy on the Finance Committee. As everyone knows, this is an appointment made by the moderator until the charter changes through the legislature, which hasn't happened yet. It's still, last time I checked with Carter before he left, it was in process, but I don't believe we have an update on where that stands. So the moderator is still the appointing authority for this vacancy. We do not have a moderator, so I spoke with town council, and town council informed me that we would follow the charter that says after 30 days of notice, if the appointing authority doesn't take action, the committee itself makes the appointment. We advertised that vacancy and 3 people applied. So at the end of this meeting, we'll interview the 3 applicants, and then after we interview them, we'll just have a discussion and we'll make a decision on who we want to appoint to the vacancy. There is no precinct requirement because every precinct currently has a representative on the Finance Committee. So this can be from any precinct, which was different than the last time. We were very lucky to get Andy because he was the only one from Precinct 1 willing to step forward at the time. So thank you, Andy, for that. Happy to have you. So any questions on how you want to run that process later from anybody? Okay, good. As far as the budget reviews today, because there are going to be a lot of people on the screen, if anybody has a question, please use the raise your hand function so we can see you. I don't want to miss anybody. And then we'll be able to recognize you as we go through this. I'm sorry I missed Wednesday's meeting, but I did watch some of it and I did hear feedback on it. And I want to ask the Finance Committee about the library budget and Evan in particular on the library budget. I'm concerned with the presentation. Some of you may remember a couple of years ago, I know Sue and Heather will remember, and Barry, a couple of years ago when the library director came before the Finance Committee, they had just gone into the infancy of building the building. And one of the things that I asked specifically at that meeting was, once the building opens, are we going to need additional staff in the library? And the library director at the time said no, that they have adequate staff to fund it. Now, from my understanding from Wednesday's meeting, there seems to be a shift that we need more staff to fill the new library. Did I understand that correctly from the meeting the other night?
Yes.
Okay, so did she get into what changed as to why now we need staff when 2 years ago we didn't need staff? Go ahead, Heather.
I think she said because they have to have more desks, they need more staffing. But the whole thing really bothered me. I was very upset about that whole thing because I understand. I mean, part of me was like, she was saying that she was arbitrarily asking for staff for the past 3 years because she felt, she didn't say this, but I think the underlying message was that she felt that if she had those staff, you can't take them away. That was just my feeling. But I was so, after that, I was not happy with that at all. And then she's gonna threaten us with not having a grant because if we don't, that really, that whole thing got me so, and I don't say a lot, you all know, I don't.
I know that, Heather, you don't at all. Well,
that really upset me.
I understand, because when I heard about this after the meeting, I was a little upset because I was the one that specifically asked, are we going to need additional staff? And the answer was an emphatic no at the time. Andy, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I'd have to go back and review, but I feel like the staffing increase was recommended by somebody above her. I don't remember if it was like a, for lack of a better term, library association or what, but I thought there was some sort of like safety concerns about blind spots in the I'm obviously can't speak to what was promised the last time, but I didn't feel at the time of the meeting that this was a decision that she had made on her own.
Sue, thank you, Andy.
She never mentioned that. I mean, she should have mentioned that from the very beginning, if this is what the library commissioners or the state library group, whatever it is, said that she had to do, because from the very beginning, she said she didn't need any staff. And I know when she first came in, when they were promoting the building, I specifically asked her, it's a big building, you aren't going to need any staff. And the only staff, she said, well, I might need a custodian. And that's the only time, and that was way, way at the beginning, that she said she'd only need a custodian. So I was really surprised and taken back by her presentation as well. And I agree with Heather. I didn't appreciate being threatened that if she doesn't get the staff, we aren't going to get the grant. We'll lose the grant. So
Thank you, Sue. Irene.
Two comments based on having been on the library planning, committee and vaguely remembering her presentation, but also the one that's met with her over the last couple of years. At some point, and I'd have to go back through my library building committee notes to find it. At some point, they had to put in the 5 desks rather than, I think she was planning on 4 rather than 5. But MLBC came down and said, no, the library this size, you will put in this many desks. And part of her reason for not wanting to do that many desks was staffing. So that was kind of, that part of it was forced on her again by the MLBC. I didn't really feel that her remark at the end was threatening so much as reality. The same way that when we build schools, the state tells us your schools will look like this. You have to have this, you have to have the other thing. I just felt that she was giving us a reality. We have built this building and the state demands that you spend this once you've done that. Now, I don't think that if she didn't get, for example, the 50,000 that she wanted, that would be enough to imperil the grant. But you can't decide that, we have to cut our library, 15 hours a week. Or gee, now that we've got it, we're going to change this or that in an attempt to save money. The state's going to come back and say, no, that's not what we agreed to when we agreed to give you a library grant. So again, I wasn't seeing that as a threat so much as stating the reality of there are certain things that come along with doing this. So again, I didn't see it, very much as threatening so much as pleading maybe. So that's all. That was just my take on it.
Okay, thank you. Gopal.
I remember during the discussion that she was asked to put one extra wall, because of which the line of sight was lost from one room to the other, because the Library Association said that you cannot mix age groups, 2 different age groups, because of which a wall had to be put out. And I have to agree with Irene, I did not. I took it as reality, because the thing I would think is that we don't want to be in a position where we tell the library director, why didn't you come and tell us that we would lose the grant? Why wasn't it part of the presentation? That's the way I looked at it. So
So it should have been, so Gopal, and based on what you're saying there, it should have been part from the beginning. Why is this?
yeah,
I
I
guess my
can't.
concern is, why is this all of a sudden an issue when 2 years ago when the building started, we specifically asked the question and it was, no, we don't need additional staff.
Yeah,
And
I
that-
cannot
That's what my
comment.
concern is.
Yeah, I cannot comment on what was there because I wasn't there.
Okay,
I'm only giving you the context based on what I heard, and also Irene and I had met with her before that. So
Yeah.
I'm just letting you know that she did mention that the wall had to come in. I don't know if that is the reason for whether that was asked. She also mentioned that her plan that was presented for the last 2 years, not even before Carter, it wasn't with Carter. The plan that was made public was what the town administrator said her budget was going to be. It wasn't her original request, whereas this time Her original request was 1.225, I think. It has been cut down to 887. She has asked for, which is 73,000 below her second ask after she had sharpened the pencil. And what she mentioned is the time when the town administrator prior to Carter, he published only the budget that he had approved, because of which any of the requests that she had for extra staff is not being reflected in the previous year's presentation. So it feels like now she's asking for a lot more staff. I'm just telling you what I've heard. I was not here, but I just wanted to provide you the context because, as I've said before, my wife works at the library, but I'm trying to keep as independent view as possible. So I'm just stating the facts, and only opinion I've stated here is I do not feel that it was threatening. That's my opinion. Just
Thank
wanted
you.
to be absolutely clear. So
Thank you, Gopal. Dan?
Yeah, I think this is, you know, a great conversation to have. I just think it's, this is not on the agenda and Beth isn't here. So I think it's a little inappropriate to be bringing all this up now, especially with people saying so much more about how they felt on Wednesday, but didn't say on Wednesday and only saying it now. So I think it's really unfair to be saving those comments till after Beth is not only not here, but also not aware that this would be on the in the meeting.
Well, I apologize, Dan. I'm the one that brought up because I wasn't here Wednesday. I'm sorry I missed the meeting. I just wanted to relay what my feeling was based on my review of the meeting, and I wanted to hear from members of the Finance Committee for my education as to exactly what transpired on Wednesday and what my concern is. So I think you raise a valid point, and I guess the way to bring this back is I want to bring her back into a meeting of the Finance Committee if we can get her back, and I want to hear more into the process. So you
I think
raise a
that would
very
be
valid point, and I think we need to bring her back because I'm not happy with what I heard. Go ahead,
I
Heather.
think that'd be a great idea. I think it's I also heard concerns from people too. So I think, you know, having a round two of the conversation with Beth would be a great idea.
Perfect. Heather, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I do apologize. Threatening was probably not the right word. That was just, I just realized my son just got kicked out of the SAT because he was late. So I'm sorry, I'm like on edge right now. But anyway,
I'm sorry to hear that.
swear. Sometimes I just hate being an adult.
I have that feeling every day, Heather.
Yeah. What point? Because I know this one, and then there's another department, and right now it's out my head. Evan, I think you would be the person to ask. Obviously, that budget is kind of was wrong. Like there's going to be a lot of changes to it, and I believe again, because now my mind is all, I had it this morning, but now I lost it. There's another budget that we were also presented that there's going to be many changes.
I think there was a fire department budget from
Thank
last
you.
week,
Yeah,
Heather.
I think you're right. I just wasn't 100% sure. So Evan, at that point, can we bring them back? Because I think that, wouldn't that be more appropriate?
Go ahead, Evan.
You can hear me, correct?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, no, I agree. So we have fire and library were the two that were the most vocal about requesting changes. We have made the changes to the fire budget already. And so you can, you know, the finance committee can decide whether or not they feel it's necessary to bring them back. Library, I agree. I think bringing Beth back in to have a further conversation is probably worthwhile. I intend to meet with Beth prior to that to kind of go through both the presentation and some of the kind of background facts to try to figure out where we're at. Mary, myself, and Will spent a good part of the week. Any minute that we weren't doing something else, we were working on the budget to kind of flesh out some of these issues. And we made some significant progress. We were able to actually prove out both the revenue projection and tie it back to what the actual budget numbers are, because they weren't calculating correctly. So right now, all things being equal, we're in deficit of 55,000. I think that number is going to drop dramatically as we tweak some of the pots of money that are sitting out there for union negotiation or retro pay or whatever it is we have to still negotiate. Like I said, fire is pretty much all set with all of the things that were discussed at the meeting. Finance committee wanted to see 100,000 in that repair line. And we were able to do that. We were able to fully fund the new chief position. And we were able to fix some of the background stuff. So that's at your discretion. And I think that library, we haven't touched yet.
Okay,
All right.
so you're gonna have the opportunity to sit down with her, so then maybe we can schedule another meeting with her after you've had the opportunity to talk to her, because if you're looking at an 800,000 budget and a $1.2 million need, I mean, that's a pretty significant jump for one department. And where's the money gonna come from, I guess is the question.
Yeah, and I just want to, I guess I'll put this in the non-PC way. I want to make sure that the 1.2 million is the need and not the ask. Because those are two.
Just for a
sometimes-
second, it's not 1.2,
What is it?
it's 1.
One, okay. I
Okay,
thought I
it
heard
was
somebody say
The
1.2.
No,
it-
the original one was 1.225. She was asked to go back. She came back with 9. The difference is 73,000, but she has said that the floor is 50,000, that if she gets 50,000, it can be balanced, just so that.
I'm looking at the proposed budget for FY22, and it was $1,842.
Okay,
That's
That's
way
still-
off from
that's still a-
1.2.
that's
I
still a
just
pretty
wanted to jump in
significant-
on that. Oh,
yeah,
it
that's still a
is, but
significant number
it
over
is,
what the budget was holding.
it is.
Paul,
But I
did
just
you
want
have
to
a-
make sure we're talking
Yeah.
about the same number.
Oh, Paul, did you have a question?
Yeah, the thing is, this is my first experience being part of the finance committee, and I also realized that it's a perfect storm that we're going through. Evan is new. Carter, he's looking at Carter's budget. He's dealing with documents that he has got. Everything is moving under him, so he's kind of in a quicksand getting up to speed. What would be helpful is asking the department heads to clean up their parts of it so that we are looking at the final numbers that they're looking at. And I'm sure that you're working with them to do it. It just becomes a little harder because you hear all these numbers saying, this is what I asked, this is where it is, this is what I want now. So I just want to make that comment that it's a little bit of a perfect storm for us. And Evan, that's not a dig at you at all. I
got it.
don't want to be in your shoes. So
We'll take dibs at Evan later, Gopal, not now.
Yeah, that's
just
fine.
Just kidding, Evan, just kidding. Irene,
I'm
did
good with
you,
it.
Irene, did you have something to say? You're muted, Irene. Irene, you're muted.
No, sorry, I had actually meant to put that down, but I'm going to throw one more thing in. Her budget, the increase in personnel, full-time equivalents was 1. Okay, so I just want to say that we're all jumping all over this, and I think we need to take.
We're not jumping on it. I'm just trying to get to the, I'm just
Yeah.
trying to understand Wednesday because we were told no additional staff. Now there's a need for additional staff. That's the only issue I raised, and I'm concerned about that. So nobody's jumping on anybody.
Yeah.
Except we're
Let's-
gonna jump on Evan and give him a hard time later, but that's a whole different.
That's fine. I think that if I could jump in, I think that the
Please.
best course of action is I'll sit down with Beth. So I think you got 2 issues, and I think that Dan raises a valid point about bringing her back in and having this
Agreed.
conversation with her. And I think that from my perspective, there's 2 issues. We've got to get to the background of the budget and the basis of the budget. Figure out if something changed midway that's beyond her control and it's MBLC driven because of this wall, then I think that presentation needs to be made very clear as to why that change occurred. And also, I think that the conversation that we had the other night, went a little sideways, and probably could have been a little bit cleaned up and presented better. So we'll talk through all of that, and we'll jump back on with you folks, and we'll square it away.
Yeah, and again, I apologize for missing Wednesday's meeting and bringing it back up this morning. So it's my fault for not being there. But Evan, I have a question for you. You said you were
Sure.
working on the budget.
Yeah.
And you're starting to balance things out and look good. So we're meeting next Saturday. And you're the number one person on the agenda for next Saturday to go through all the budgets. Between now and next Saturday, are we gonna have an updated budget from you so that we'll have a better handle on all the revenues and the numbers?
Yes, so you'll have two things from us. You'll have an updated budget to the best of our ability to get that done. There's
Yep.
still some moving parts, but it'll be very close. And then you'll also have a change log from us. We're gonna give you a separate spreadsheet that shows every line item that we changed.
Okay.
You'll be able to
Awesome.
see it in the budget, but the budget's like 3,500 lines long. So try to save you a little headache of trying to dig through and figure all that out.
Okay, perfect. All right,
Okay.
I want to apologize to Chris and everybody that's here for your meeting. We went a little longer and your start time is supposed to be 8:45, so I apologize. And Chris, thank you for being here this morning. What we're going to do is I'm going to share my screen and put the planning budget up first. We'll talk about that, then we'll look at economic development and conservation after that, and we'll let you lead the discussion. So first up, can everybody see this? Yes, okay. So this is the planning budget. So Chris, if you want to walk us through anything you want to walk us through, and then we'll ask questions and go from there.
Yeah, thank you for having me. In terms of the budget this year, primarily we're looking at level funding. There are a few minor changes that we made. I think the first and foremost one to discuss is we did include an assistant planner position. That was a request that was made last year as well. And so we're mirroring that, but some of the changes that I made in terms of the level funding and to make it a little bit more palatable and change it from last year is we had a number of internship positions from last year and line items for that. What I did is I removed those from the budget and then included a part-time assistant planner position. I don't have the worksheet in front of me, but it's a little bit over $20,000, which will get us the 19 hours at a fairly low wage. But I think it could be somewhat competitive. In addition to that, I did meet with the Affordable Housing Trust, who has been asking for ways to provide or to have additional staff support from our office, understanding the capacity issues and looking to provide some funding for that. So the request also comes with verbal commitments from the Affordable Housing Trust for an additional $20,000. What that would do would allow us to still do the 19 hours a week part-time, but I think we would be more competitive and be able to get a more experienced applicant to apply for that position, which will allow us to make those dollars go a little bit further. So depending upon how things play out, if we're just left on either end with the $20,000, we may be able to do some contract work, but the ask is for the 20,000 in the budget and then the additional 20,000 to be made up by the Affordable Housing Trust.
So just to make sure I understand, so the total cost of this position is 40,000 is what you're expecting?
Yeah, a little bit over. Yeah. Yep. So, but for our budget, we're just asking for the 20,000, a little over 20,000. Sorry, if you go up the staff planner, 20,721.
This line right here.
Correct. Yep. And so then, so that's our request for just the part-time. And then if the Affordable Housing Trust is able to commit the $20,000 that they had discussed, that will allow us to kind of beef up that position to attract either more hours or more expertise in a position. So
These columns aren't lining up here. So the the economic development position, this is the 3593, not the overtime, right? So this. should be
Correct,
down the
yeah,
line here.
sorry.
Okay. No, it's not your
yeah,
fault. It's just the way it lined up.
Yep.
Because I was gonna say, wow, you're gonna spend a lot of overtime this year, Chris. Crazy. Sue, go ahead.
I was just going to correct you that you had the wrong line. That's all.
Okay, thanks.
Um,
Go ahead, Chris.
Yep, so that's the first kind of major change. Beyond that, we're largely level funded in all other sectors from last year. We did remove the in-state travel, so we have that was previously for vehicle reimbursements. My understanding is that hasn't been used since we do have town owned vehicles. Something to note with the town-owned vehicles is I believe they are in fairly significant amounts of disrepair. So that may be something that can be addressed in capital requests, but since that line item hasn't been used, that was another cut that we made, being conscious of the climate of the budget this year. But so those are for planning, primarily the large changes. So.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understand 100% completely. So I'm probably repeating myself more than anything, but the staff planner, the assistant planner, if you don't get the affordable, if you don't get the money from that other organization, you're still going to try to get somebody for 20 grand?
Yeah, so the options for that would be either, I do think that the 20 grand alone would be a bit low for a part-time position. We could advertise it and see what we get for applicants. But if we can't, with that amount, if we're too tight and we're not able to attract the expertise that we need for the position, we may be able to use it for contract work as, per project kind of thing.
So whether you have a position or a contractor, that 20,000 is important for the planning board for fiscal year 22.
Yes, yeah,
Regardless of
so,
how you do it. Okay.
yeah,
When
so
are
in
you going to
terms,
hear from the trust and whether or not they're going to assist?
correct.
No, I'm sorry. When are
Oh.
you going to hear from them if they're going to assist?
So I have met with them and verbally, so in the previous budgets, they had included $10,000 as the Affordable Housing Trust has consistently said that they would commit $10,000. When I met with them, they actually corrected me and said that they had verbally committed in the past to 20,000 and we're still willing to do that amount. So I don't have a formal commitment. That would be something after if we got the funding here, then I would go to them to ask to bolster the position to attract a position at the 40,000 level.
Understood. Any questions from, go ahead, Sue. Did you have a question? I saw you.
No.
No, okay. Any questions from any members of the finance committee? Go ahead, Dan.
Hi. So just as a member of the Affordable Housing Trust, I just want to say that I'm personally pushing hard for the, our half of the money for that position. I think it'll be extremely beneficial to just helping us move some projects along. And in fact, I'd like to see even more, but I'm definitely happy to see, this compared to the current fiscal year is already more. So I'm excited to see this.
So Dan, can I ask a question just for my education? The Affordable Housing Trust every year gets the money in the housing bucket directly sent to you for housing issues. What's the balance that you guys have right now? Because I know you were using money for rental assistance and things like that. How much money do you have available in the budget that would make this potential a reality?
I don't know off the top of my head. If you give me a minute, I can look it up because as the clerk, I just recently took the minutes for that meeting, so I can pull that up for you.
Okay,
It'll just take a minute.
I agree with you 100%. Having the trust and having an assistant planner that can help with these types of issues is very, very important. So I'm glad to hear that you're pushing for it, and I hope it comes true, because having a dedicated staff member as opposed to hiring consultants, I think it'll make your job a lot easier, Chris. You'll have better control. So it makes sense to me. 100% makes sense to me. All right, any other questions on the planning board budget itself? None? Okay, so Chris, the next thing is the economic development budget, and I think that's on page, you have to forgive me for making everybody dizzy as I speed through here. Of course, I went flying by it. If I missed the
Mark,
yeah, go ahead.
Page 70.
Chris, can I ask a detailed question on the 25 Worcester Street? Is there anything happening with that one?
Yes, so that the 25 Worcester Street, we did select a consultant to do the survey work. After that's completed, we'll move on to, we'll review that with the Affordable Housing Trust, what that survey comes up as. And then we'll look at either moving into conceptual plans or going from there. But the next step would be conceptual plans, looking at what we could fit on that site as it stands. So,
Okay.
and
I did see a surveyor plowing through the snow, trying to do his measurements.
Yeah. Yep. And then just another quick note in terms of the emergency rental assistance. Just to clarify, we have not tapped Affordable Housing Trust dollars for that program yet. The funding went through CARES and CPA first. And just this week, we've transferred over to Affordable Housing Trust, but we have not had applications yet to tap that.
So we
dollar.
have provided rental assistance, but we haven't used the money that was set aside in the trust. We used other funds for it.
Yeah, so the way it was set up was there was essentially three buckets that we looked to pull from to fund the program. And it was specifically organized to pull from first the CARES funding, which had a deadline. And once that deadline was up and the money was returned, we then started pulling from the CPA dollars that were allocated. And then once those, which had a deadline in February, and then once those have been returned, we would pull from Affordable Housing Trust dollars. So.
Understood. Thank you. Sue?
Yeah. I just wanted to mention while Chris was here that he had asked for capital for his master plan, and he was, the CIPC did recommend 30,000 for his first phase, which came in 3 phases for a master plan. So I just wanted to mention that while Chris was here, if you had any questions for him.
Well, that leads me to a question. So you're phasing this in. What's the total anticipated cost? 100 grand to do the master plan? And over how long a period of time?
Yeah, so yeah, we set it for 90,000. So it's over 3 requests, 3 phases. So it'd be a 3-year endeavor at 30,000 each year. Oh, I believe, sorry. The second year we increased the request, and then the last year is less. It's really just kind of tying up loose ends.
And Sue, there's a commitment from the CIPC to recommend to the town administrator to fund it that way?
Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you. Any other questions on planning before we jump to economic development? So I guess my question to start, Chris and Evan, is we put the conservation agent and the economic development agent under the planning board for wages, but then we have separate department budgets for expenses. So it just doesn't seem to me that we're showing the actual cost of those departments. Granted, they all work for you, Chris, but why wouldn't we put the salaries in the department budget? Why does it? I guess I don't understand the way it's laid out, because it's not giving us the true cost of economic development. The total budget's, $35,000 or $45,000. But when you look at this, it looks like we're spending $12,300. Is there a way that we can readjust this so we can see the actual cost of the department? It doesn't change the reporting structure.
Yeah. So just to kind of be clear that the conservation is still their own separate department, but we do share staff. So our budgets have been somewhat intermingled in the past couple of years. And part of the, I won't say one way or the other as to the reason for presenting it in each budget, but the portion that's included in the planning budget is the planning department's contribution to the conservation and assistant planner position. So as the assistant planner position was vacated, we used the conservation agent to fill that position, and the planning department contributes half of the salary for that position, and then there's two other buckets that conservation controls that are is under their budget that funds the remainder of the salary.
It's just confusing to me. It doesn't show true costs, and it's hard to get a handle on what's funding what. So I'm sorry. I'm a little slow. So I was just trying to understand how it works.
So Mark, I agree with you. I think that's just one part of the budget that needs to be readjusted as far as transparency, because it is all kind of all over the place. And while you're talking, I'm even trying to find my other section here. So, I mean, it really should just fall straight, kind of linear under Chris in planning. This is who reports, and then blah, 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 everything in one spot. So
Yep.
we'll, I doubt we'll do it for this particular budget, but I think I'm making notes that we'll make that shift when we make it our own coming through the next year.
Appreciate that, Evan. Thank you very, very much.
Yep.
All right, so John is here. Thank you, John, for being here. I'm glad once and for all, we've settled the issue of how you're going to get paid. It's nice to see that it's in the operating budget this year, and there's not any question of funding for this particular position. So if you want to walk us through, or Chris or whoever, walk us through the expense lines, I'd appreciate that.
All right, I'll walk you through the expense lines. The way the budget was explained to me is, although we have different buckets as it shows up on your screen, I was told to really look at the total budget and adapt to the different situations as we're experienced during the current year. So as long as the total amount spent didn't exceed the budget, I was told that was fine. For instance, we've had this annual breakfast item as a line item since I've arrived, and we've never done that. Part of the reasons we've never done that is because I felt like that money could be spent better elsewhere. In addition, when I start to do a function or event, I want specific goals that could be achieved, and I was never truly satisfied with the goals that would be achieved by having that breakfast.
So what are some of the things that are going on right now, John, in terms of economic development, where your focus is at, and how we're doing overall?
Okay. We're currently in a process of rolling out what we call the Restaurant Gift Certificate Program, and I'll have a better name going forward. But if we look at restaurants, what we realized is those were some of the businesses hardest hit through COVID. And in addition, it tended to be more of the sit-down restaurants that were hit more. If you're a pizza place, yeah, their sales are down 20% generally speaking. But for the restaurants that had people come and sit down, those restaurants were hit a lot more. So what we've done is we've allocated $7,000 from this year's current budget. We're going to buy $710 gift certificates. And then what we're going to do is distribute them to all the businesses that participated in Shop Grafton. Each business will then be able to decide what needs to be achieved for a person to get that gift certificate. So it's really doing two things. One is it's helping the businesses in town generate higher sales. And two, it's helping the restaurants, because if a person gets a gift certificate, they're very unlikely to go and spend only $10. They're more likely to go and spend more. In addition, it may be a motivation for somebody to go to a restaurant that hadn't planned to do so. I could go on about this program, so just stop me if you want me to.
I don't know if speak for the rest of the finance committee, but I'm interested in it.
All right. One of the things that we're trying to do is, initially when we talked about, we decided we were going to set dollar figure. So say if a person spends $10, they get if they spend $50 at a particular place, they get a $50 gift certificate to the restaurant of their choice. What we decided to do was to do it equally. We currently have 23 restaurants in town. So it comes up, so each restaurant will receive, the town will purchase $300 of gift certificates from each restaurant, or 30 gift certificates. The reason the retailers that will be distributing the gift certificates are setting their amounts, because we want it to be motivating where there's a true benefit. If we went to Koopman's Lumbers, for them, a $50 gift certificate, you spend $50, you get a gift certificate, they'll have that given away in the first hour, and there's no true benefit to Koopman's Lumber. But if they turned around and they said at, say, $250, and I'm just using that as a figure, it's a benefit for that person to spend that $250. We're hoping to get it so maybe they would buy an additional item to generate revenue. Conversely, I take Anytime Fitness. Well, all of the members, I'm making an assumption, but all of the members pay the same amount for the membership. So Anytime Fitness may say, hey, for the first 9 people who join, they get the $10 gift certificate. So to them, there's a benefit and it's an incentive for the people. And you could go down the list of, depending on what the business is, what that incentive could be. And by delegating it to the restaurants, not the restaurants, but the retailers, we feel that that could be more impactful. Now, because each one is really setting their own criteria, we really don't know what the projected benefit will be. But when we ran the numbers at $50, it came up to be $35,000 in additional revenue, or revenue that those businesses would receive.
Oh, wow. That's pretty good. Go, Paul, do you have a question?
Yeah, I just want to understand how the program works. So the town will spend $6,900 or $7,000 and buy
700 gift certificates.
700 gift certificates,
Yes,
and each of them is $10 worth.
yes.
And the businesses that participated in Shop Grafton can decide how many certificates they need?
No, that's going to be divided equally amongst the businesses that
Equally among-
participated in Shop Grafton.
Amongst the businesses.
Yeah, there'll be some variances, because say you take the John Henry's at the golf course, they don't participate in Shop Grafton because they're closed during that time of year. But given the time we're doing it, they are open, so they'll participate. So pretty close alignment,
Okay.
but there is some variances.
And they can decide whether they're going to give the certificates that they get to one person or 10 people, if they get 10 of them, let's say.
Well, in part, you're right. What we're going to do is we're going to require them to put in writing what their policy is. So
Yeah.
that way they just aren't handing it out to 9 friends.
Yeah,
And also it lets us have a better accounting to try and figure out economically in the end what that benefit was. Because obviously you're going to ask me a year from now, how successful is the program? I won't have exact numbers, but at least I'll have documentation and a way to logically arrive at an amount that I feel is appropriate.
Excellent. So it's more revenue for the business. That means even if it's only 35,000, there's some money coming back to the town in terms of tax revenues. Great, excellent, love it.
Plus you'll get the meals tax.
What's that?
Plus you'll get the meals tax.
Okay, yeah, love it. Thank
Go
you.
ahead, Sue.
I just wanted to mention to John Allen, I'm sure you're not aware of the history of the economic development, but there is a lot of economic development. When I was on, we did a lot of advocating, and we were instrumental in getting the 43D expedited permitting passed at town meeting, as well as getting a warrant article passed for 2 parcels at Centec Park and at Tufts Parks for 43D. And we also supported the 40R smart growth and advocated for that. And we went to the selectmen and we went to the planning board to give our recommendations. And I would kind of like to see economic development get back into that flow of recommending things to select board and planning board, because when we stood up at town meeting, people accepted and like that the development was speaking up for these things.
I
Chris,
thank you for the history, and I appreciate what you're saying. And we are in the process of proposing some changes to zoning. And my opinion is when we look at the success of the outdoor seatings and the outdoor entertainment that the restaurants experienced last year as a result of COVID, we found that some of the negative projections or some of the negative detriments that were predicted didn't materialize. And we're in the process of looking at moving that forward as a change to zoning. So we are doing some of that.
Well, there's,
hold on 1 second, Sue. Chris, you had your hand up if you want to address that, and then I'll go to Sue and then go Paul.
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on some of the long-range planning efforts that we are doing for economic development and that John has really been assisting with. In terms of the, he had mentioned the outside seating. So this year, especially with the COVID impacts, we did the temporary outdoor seating permits, and he was instrumental in kind of touching base with the businesses, making sure that they were coming into development team meetings and getting before the boards that they needed to in order to get the doors open. And actually, I do think, I haven't reviewed the other communities, but I think we did get our businesses open very quickly and safely with, the impacts of COVID coming up, so that they were able to weather those storms as well as possible. We also have the 27 Upton and 8 Pine Street RFPs. And as much as I try as much to be involved in those and lead those projects, John Allen is very instrumental in keeping me on track on those and facilitating the conversation as well with the developer as little things come up, or if they have some questions, he's able to field a lot of those. So he's been really helpful in kind of bringing those efforts to fruition and keeping them running smoothly. And then lastly, things coming up that we have that I anticipate in this year, leaning on John for, is we did receive the $60,000 for the local rapid recovery plan program. So that's going to be looking at COVID impacts, not just the short-term impacts to local businesses, but what are the long-term impacts? How do we make sure that this recovery, the long-term economic impacts are addressed as well, so that we continue to recover and continue to grow as needed. And part of that is, that $60,000 is going to go to a consultant, but every consultant needs some kind of direction and hand-holding in a way. So, me and John will both be instrumental, I think, in guiding that project. So those are some of the longer term and broader economic development efforts that we are working on. So.
Thank you, Chris. Sue?
I appreciate all that, Chris, and I appreciate the involvement that John Allen has been involved in some of these projects. I just wish that EDC would be more public about it and advocate publicly to the select board and the planning board when these projects do come up. We just sent letters and said we recommend and support this project. It wasn't anything extreme or anything like that, but it seems like, John Allen, you're doing these things behind the scene that we don't know about. And I think you need to advocate these projects more and put yourself out there more to let people know that you're working to get revenue into this town. And that's all I'm saying. I appreciate that all this that's being done and what's going to be done in the future.
Thank you, Sue. Go Paul?
Yes, I want to second what Sue said. Because here I am sitting and thinking about all the great work that you guys are doing. And the only thing I get to hear what is happening in the town is how many marijuana licenses and to be granted, who is going to be the first one to finish, and so on. Nothing that gets me excited. And the other question I wanted to ask is Edgemere Drive-In in Shrewsbury is going to get a huge development there. Now, do we have opportunities in town for some things like that? I have no idea in terms of zoning regulations or whatever, my question is, are we thinking big in terms of, given the fact that Mass Bike runs right through the town, do we have such opportunities, whether to attract things like Market Basket or anything like that, or even businesses that would generate more revenues for the town?
So yes, so I think in terms of kind of what I call courting developers, is it's a delicate dance, right? I think some of the success that we've had for sure is with 8 Pine Street. You know, we're looking at, they're proposing 316 units and 10,000 square feet of retail, which is certainly significant. And then from that spin off, the RFP that we received for 27 Upton, although some of the project team is different, it's largely, you know, GSX LLC that is proposing that 27 Upton as well, which is you know, just over 130 units. And I forget how much, but there is a retail component. I forget how many square feet.
About 8,000.
Thank you. And so again, that's another significant development. I think, you know, we continue to look at sites and areas that might be conducive to development like that. And we'll, you know, we do have the expedited permitting, and there's we do consistently have talks with developers on a very informal scale or very conceptual scale frequently. None of those conversations, you know, I feel have risen to the need to really notify people. But when they get there, we're able to move quickly. So I think Grafton is seeing a lot of development pressure, and that's part of why we're anticipating a need for additional capacity in the office, just to deal with you know, the development projects that do go through, and to continue to support the efforts to attract additional development or additional interest in Grafton. So
Excellent. So just like Sue said, advertise what you're doing. You're doing great work. Let the citizens know. Means whether it's through social media or whatever. Thank you so much for all the hard work. Yeah.
Sue?
I just wanted to ask Chris and John Allen if there's been any effort in filling up some of these empty gas stations and stores, or what's out there, if we're working, if we have some goals or plans of what we want to do with those. I know they're privately owned, of course, but how are we working to get them filled?
I believe there was, and I have to follow up, I believe there was some look at redeveloping the one on Providence Road. And I don't remember off the top of my head why that's stalled, but I can follow up. And that's something that we can definitely look at in terms of if there's zoning that is inhibiting those redevelopment, or if it's, you know, other kind of issues. I think the LRRP program, that will be a good way to explore some of those impediments to local businesses, not just gas stations, but certainly we can take a little bit of a focus on that as well.
Excellent.
Could Gopal mentioned something, if I can ask a follow-up question. What is going on with the marijuana? Sorry, Gopal, I'm just curious as to
okay.
as to where that stands.
Currently, we have authority to have 2 retail licenses. We have an unlimited number of cultivation licenses. And there's no limit on licenses for testing. Everybody's focus tends to be on the retail stores. That seems to be the stuff that's hitting the press. What I'd like to do is to back up and give you the economics of how this situation works, to give you some context to truly appreciate what's going on. The first thing you need to know is that when the laws for cannabis were written, they were written by industry groups and not by the legislature. So as a result, a lot of the things that were put in place didn't look at the actual management of the process. So what's happened is businesses would go around and get what they call a provisional license, which is basically as Carter described, as a learner's permit. That provisional license has value. And if a person cannot use it, gets a provisional license, they can actually transfer that provisional license to another town or actually sell it. So we've had people who've obtained the provisional licenses and basically sold it and never had any intention of opening up businesses. The second thing that we're encountering is that Grafton was one of the first towns to approve the cannabis licenses. The challenge became is as business owners, they went and they got the provisional licenses from other towns as well. And when they looked at it, it made much more sense to develop your cannabis business in Worcester than Grafton based on the higher amount of population. And that's resulted in us being low on the list for development, even though we were in the forefront in improving those licenses.
So we have two slots, 3 people vying for them, and
Yeah.
now it's a race to the finish line.
Well, it's funny because that term race to finish line is being used, but the fact is, it's always been first 2 people who obtained the licenses from the CCC get to open up.
Okay.
Now, within the town, our position was we were never making that decision of who's first, second, or third, because it was the Cannabis Control Commission administering and approving the licenses, not the town. So they're telling us, hey, here's what license 1, here's license 2, you're done. So the town, from our perspective, was never involved in deciding who the 3 licensees were going to be.
So Chris, this is a question for you. There was a citizens petition article on the warrant last spring that lost. It was a zoning amendment. So under the laws of the under state law with zoning, if a article comes forward and it loses, it has a 2-year prohibition before it can come back unless there's a positive vote of the planning board to bring it back. And so the planning board would have to vote if they say you wanted to bring something back to this year's town meeting. The planning board would have to vote to do that. Has there been any discussion on revisiting that issue?
Yeah, so I believe, and Evan, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I believe as a citizen's petition, it does not fall under the 2-year cool-off period, but certainly we could bring it back before the planning board if we want to do a belt and suspenders approach. And then the other kind of caveat is whether or not it's significantly changed. So there may be a way to adjust that to make it both more palatable to voters as well as fall under that significant change to rehear it. So I think that there's options to revisit that if needed. And just to kind of clarify, I think historically my understanding of I have somewhat limited involvement in it, but my understanding of the whole first to the finish policy was even back when the HCAs were signed, that was verbally expressed to each of the applicants that was going to be the case. And so really the first to the finish policy was formally and memorializing that verbal expression so that now it's in writing and people are, those verbal expressions are now put in writing. So
I know Gopal, you had your hand up, but Evan, you want to respond to Chris's question first, and then we'll go back to Gopal?
Yeah, so I think that there's some latitude to bring a zoning amendment back if it was originally submitted under MGL 39 section 10 resident petition. And obviously there's a planning board affirmation or rejection in there that comes into play as well. But I also think that, the law allows for, you can't bring anything back that is not substantially different. But if you look at the case law, substantially different, if the citizens petition was looking to increase from 20% to 50%, and you were going from 2 licenses to 5 licenses, if you come back and say, well, we're just looking to go up to 3, I think that's significantly different enough to meet that standard. And I think, obviously not being here, just finishing up week 3, In reading the citizens petition and reviewing what happened at town meeting, perhaps that was a little bit too big of a bite of the apple. And the residents might have, an appetite for going from 2 to 3 as opposed to 2 to 5.
Yeah.
Those are significant changes. So, there are some discussions in the background as to whether that is a viable option as well. And we'll have to see how that plays out, in the politics of Grafton.
Thank you, Evan. I appreciate the update. Go, Paul.
Yeah, so a couple of questions. One is I've read about the threat of lawsuit by one company, one of the license owners saying that this race to the finish line was not part of the early agreements. The second thing is there's a lot of discussion whenever this comes up, and it's a heated debate, just like many other topics, like, for example, the library in the town, right? There is a vocal minority, vocal majority, whatever it is. What are the benefits? What are the economic benefits of having an additional marijuana license in the town? It has not been clear to me because we have granted these licenses. We have not seen a dime come through, of course, because they are not open. But what are other towns seeing, both in terms of, we cannot just look at the revenue, but also cost of that revenue in terms of livability, what kind of people are brought into town, traffic, and all of that. So do we have good benchmarks that we can compare against so that we can educate the audience? Because this is just it's like a kryptonite, right? Both the parties are so polarized on this topic. So I'm just trying to understand.
I can convey to you what's been conveyed to me. I haven't verified it. But from my understanding and talking to some of these businesses, they're saying roughly 11% of the population participates in use of cannabis. They're also telling me that different cannabis products, I don't know, I can't compare to beers. Different people drink beers, but some people have an affinity for different types of beers over other types of beers. And based on the way it was relayed to me, that's how the people will feel about their cannabis. When I looked at the business plans of the 3 retailers, all 3 retailers predicted $10 million in sales. The town receives 3% of sales for those businesses, hence the reason the revenue that's derived to the towns. The question that's unknown, but the cannabis people seem to say, is that if you take that $10 million, you're not dividing it by 3. The fact is there's an additional revenue that's received. And let me throw another curveball in there for you, is since the law has been changed to allow the delivery of cannabis. So what that means is if you have a cannabis business in Grafton that's delivering cannabis all over the state, even though that may have been sold in Worcester or Holden or wherever, the town of Grafton is the beneficiary of those sales. Conversely, if people are coming from Worcester or wherever and selling in Grafton, the other community is the benefit of those retail sales.
Yeah.
Go
John,
go.
I just want to respond to one thing. I am not comfortable in anything what the cannabis business owners want to tell us in terms of projected revenues. Every business owner thinks that their business is going to be the most successful. Just like how you said that the rules were written by lobbying groups and not the legislature, I would love to see economic numbers of taxes received by the town in those towns rather than just looking at somebody's business plan. Everybody can say that my business would be $10 million. I just want to put that on the record. So
what I will do for you, Gopal, is I will go to the Cannabis Control Commission and ask them to see what type of statistics and information they can provide. But I'll also throw this out there. As a former commercial loan officer, I reviewed countless business plans. And the joke used to be, we know the business plan is wrong. We just don't know if it's how above or below and by how much. So we know that they're inaccurate. What we've done as loan officers, we would always look at the logic and the reasoning behind the numbers that are projected to see if the process made sense, because we had no idea what those would be. And looking at the processes of how those numbers were assembled, it did make sense to me. But I will get confirmation from the Cannabis Control Commission as to what type of numbers are being generated from the people and try and do an analysis for you.
I've got a couple more things, and then we got to get on to Leah. She's been very patient sitting here through all of this, but Dan and then Andy and then Chris, I'll let you wrap it up. Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I just want to say with this race to the finish perspective, I feel like that doesn't really capture the perspective of the business owner, because if they have
Hon, could you not do that now, please?
if they have an HCA in Grafton, and they have an HCA in another town, and the other town doesn't have, or if they have, only as many HCAs as they have slots or number of retail locations available, the risk in Grafton is far higher, especially considering that that limit is enforced so late in the process that they can put in tons of money of investment and only find out very late that they lost the race. I think it doesn't capture that part about the risk, that they're going to pick the town where there's far less risk and not focus on Grafton. I think that's a big piece of why adding a third opportunity would help to get some more progress in Grafton, not just because, well, let's see if we can get 2 first. I think getting us to 2 would happen a lot faster if those 2 businesses that are going to get there first could be assured that there will be a spot for them, even if they hit a delay and end up becoming the 3rd.
Makes sense, Dan. Andy?
Sorry, I don't mean to get us further off track, but from what I remember of that town meeting, putting aside the people who are just staunchly anti-cannabis and breaking it down into the group that seemed to be more anti-3 license, the 2 major concerns I remember were, I believe we had a couple open liquor licenses or the possibility for expansion. So when you say that the cannabis licenses were a percentage of the possible liquor licenses, there was, if all the liquor licenses were filled, there was a potential from that number to jump from 3 cannabis facilities to 5. The other main concern that I remember was that if we expanded to the 3 facilities that are applying right now, they're all within a mile or 2 of each other, I believe all in North Grafton. We're talking on Centec Boulevard, Route 30, where Anzio's Pizza used to be, and then the location on Providence Street. And I think there was some concern over the fact that they were so tightly grouped in that one section of town and not spread out further. I think those were the main dissents I heard coming from the anti-3rd license people, as opposed to people who are just anti-cannabis.
Makes sense. Chris, did you have one last point you want to make on this before we move to Leah?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I appreciate that insight into the discussion of grouping the businesses. That's something that we can look at as well. But I just wanted to mention, in addition to John reaching out to the CCC, I'll also put a post on the Mass Planners listserv asking other communities that have opened things of the impacts and the revenues that they've seen. It won't be purely analytical, but it'll get us some insight into what that looks like in other communities. So
Thank you.
Nothing like a robust cannabis discussion on a Saturday morning finance committee meeting. So thank you, everybody, for that. Leah, you have been very, very patient. So why don't we jump over to conservation and have you walk us through your budget?
Sure. Good morning. Can
Thank
everybody
you for
hear
being
me?
here. Yep.
So conservation is Mostly looking for level funding, the one exception being an additional request for a part-time field inspector. This position would be 15 hours a week at $20 an hour, and they would take on a lot of the, as the name implies, field inspections that I do right now for conservation. So this is ongoing construction inspections as well as investigating complaints from residents. We get all kinds of things to go check out in the field. And we have had a couple requests come our way from the select board goal setting process to put annual grant cycles on our calendar. So additional work that requires me being more in the office at the desk. So I was requesting a little assistance with the going out in the field piece. Other than that, it's pretty much level funding, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, so just to understand the department head salary, you have it here. The salary 64,000, 27% comes from the wetlands protection, 50% from planning. So the conservation piece is this 14,000. And I guess that goes back, Evan, to my point earlier. It'd be nice to see the actual budget contain what the actual cost is instead of having it in 3 or 4 different places. And I support the conservation field inspector. I can understand why you need that. I'm glad to see that Carter put that in the original budget. I hope Evan leaves it in there for you. Irene?
Follow up on what you said about, how the salaries get split. Leah had indicated to me in our discussion that, yeah, having her salary split among several accounts is also a major accounting headache.
I can
Not only
imagine.
would it be nice for us as we're trying to review the budgets, but it would help them as well. So Evan, I don't know if she had mentioned it to you or not, or Mary, just put that on your radar. I think if we could find a way to simplify, it would help everybody.
Thank you,
That's it.
Irene. Any other questions? Any other questions for Leah on her budget? It seems pretty straightforward. And I know she was so excited sitting through that cannabis discussion for a 5-minute budget review, but thank you so much, Leah, for being here this morning. John, thank you for being here. Chris, thank you for being here. The finance committee really appreciates you taking time out of your Saturdays to come see us. Barry, you didn't use the raise your hand function that moves you to the top of the thing. It's hard to see you at the bottom of the screen. So I'm reprimanding
The
you.
raise your hand function.
On the bottom thing, so there's a little hand that says raise hand. Click that, you go right to the top.
Somebody took my hand away. Okay.
Mark, you're going to regret.
Yeah, you know something, go Paul? As soon as it came out of my mouth, I thought it's the same thing. Go ahead, Barry. What do you got for Leah?
Yeah. Is any conservation activity going on the UPS site?
The last thing I remember coming up there was talks of National Grid needing to do some work. They have not filed for that with us yet.
Okay.
Anything else for Leah, Chris, or John? All right, again, thank you so much for coming. We really appreciate it. It was a great discussion this morning, a lot of good information presented. So I really appreciate your time. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, that's Bob Berger. I see Bob, you're here. Welcome. Thank you for being here this morning.
Good morning.
Is there
Finance Committee.
an order in which you would like us to go through your various budgets?
No, just pick them.
All right, so we'll go through the way that we have them listed on the sheet here on the agenda. So the first budget is the ZBA budget, which is on page 64. Let me get down to that. Here we go. If you want to walk us through that, Bob.
Well, I go to the other screen. Down more. There you go. That's how I like looking at it.
Yep.
So you cut off Katrina's salary. So with Katrina, we put in a pretty big request to get her pay more in line with our other employees in town. She's been working for the town for roughly 10 years, making not even step one. I met with Carter and we come up with a reasonable approach to get her where she really should be. This is a non-union position. So we were going for 29 and the town administrator put it down to 20.
What's the hourly rate, Bob?
Say that one more time.
What is the hourly rate that you're looking for?
I I think it was, let me look at this.
18 something?
Yeah, I think it was. Well, that's what she was making. And then we went for 20 something.
Evan, is this one of the positions, you mentioned to us last week that you received a
Lost it.
grant to do a salary study? Is this one of the things that would be addressed as part of what you're looking to do?
Probably. We just finished this week getting every position identified and which positions are unique enough to be able to go out to bid. So it would be my intent, yes. But I don't know how far that 30 grand goes and what our priorities might be in the end. So probably a couple weeks out on that answer, but probably.
Evan, you've been here 3 weeks. You haven't solved all the problems yet. What are you doing?
I know. I've been slacking.
All right. So Bob, I understand your point on that. Wages, so that takes care of the administrative personnel. Doesn't look like any heavy lifting in your expense lines here.
No, there's not. It was basically trying to get Katrina or that position up to a fair rate based on the skill that we have in our town hall.
Any
I don't know if
questions?
you saw my chat. If I take 29,475 and use 25 hours, 52 weeks, it will be 2260. If I use 20 hours for 52 weeks, it's about $28. So
And that's like step 5 or step 6 of the scale. But we're not basing it on that. We're basing it on the 26.5. Because the 29,475 was not, it did not go through. So we're talking the town administrator's recommendations is the 26.5.
Understood. Any other questions on zoning? All right, we can jump ahead now next to municipal inspectors. Let me get up to there, which is on page 74. So Bob, if you want to walk us through that.
This is the town administrator's salary. I'm not talking about the town administrator's salary. Oh, but the department head right there, we had a $5,000 stipend that was covering me taking care of the town buildings, except for the schools. We zeroed that out and we put that in the line item under 241 under the department head.
Okay,
That's why that's zeroed out.
understood. So these line items they don't look to be, but the 175,000 that the town administrator is budgeting, we're adding, right now we have 2 full-time and 1 part-time, and we're bumping it up to 50,000 to add another custodian.
Another
library?
custodian full-time for the library.
And this was part of the plan from when the library was discussed. It was always the intention to do that, and this is the year that we're adding it.
I'm going to say yes.
You could say no, but
Well, no, I'm going to
Right.
say yes.
so.
Well, it's a very large building.
Yep.
It needs to be kept up, needs to be clean, needs to be sanitized, especially in the day and age that we're in right now. And the janitor crew is under my supervision. So it's really not just for the library. It's for everything that my department does for taking care of the buildings. So if we need more people at the library for a function, well, we just pull them out of that pool. We have to shovel snow, we pull them out of the pool that we have.
So when, guys, again, I know you yelled at me earlier for bringing this up, so I'm gonna bring it up again, but when the library presented Wednesday night, was this position discussed as part of your discussion with the library? Let's do the finance committee. Anyone? Irene?
Yes, it was. And she talked about how this has been an ongoing discussion, which it has been for a couple of years. And she said, so long as she has somebody that comes in and cleans the building, she's good. It doesn't have to be somebody on her staff that she supervises. So she said, I'm fine with a pooled custodial, so long as they recognize, she said, we needed 15 hours a week to keep the old building cleaned. Given that this building is more than twice the size, it's realistic to think if you needed 15 for the old one, you're going to need 30 hours or more for this one. That's pretty much a full-time person. So
I'm
yes,
glad-
it
I'm
did
glad to
come
see
up
it's
and
in
those
there.
were the comments.
Yeah, I'm glad to see it's in there. Evan?
Yeah, the general rule of thumb is one full-time employee for every 20,000 square feet that you need to maintain. The real world doesn't usually work out that way, but I think that the new library is 26,000 square feet, so seems reasonable we would add that one bump to our staff.
Yep, no, it makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. Any questions on the personnel wage lines? All right, going to expenses, Bob, if you want to walk us through that.
What I do is I take what our actuals are and I take a look to see, are we over, are we under, and we just make adjustments from there. It was a tough year last year, but we did the best we could. Energy, we spent 76, we're asking for 55. I think we can do it. Repair and maintenance, Mr. McInerney and Becker at the end of the year, they needed to make adjustments. And I'm thinking that this is where they made their adjustments. This is going to be a better year to base our next fiscal year on, because I'm hoping it's going to be cleaner at the end of the year. But when it comes to energy and repair and maintenance, I think we're going to get a better understanding on where we are and where we landed. That's why those numbers still look the way they look. Building repair and maintenance, I think they're still good. Communication, I don't talk about. Office supplies, I don't talk about. Custodial housekeeping, that's paper towels in our toilets. In our cleaning supplies, they look good. And I think the bottom line, it's going to be a better year than it was last fiscal year.
So the energy costs for just the municipal center that this covers?
This is just the municipal center, and it's tough for me to really give you a detail on the entire line because the responsibilities of who pays what bills are split between the town administrator's office and my office. And that's because of these deals with electricity that I don't really even have my head wrapped around on where we are on that.
It seems to me that it's too confusing having costs associated with the same facility in several different budgets. It seems to me that maybe we need to change the way it's budgeted and try to get everything into one place, because it's really hard for us as a finance committee to understand total costs if you have it in 3 different budgets. Evan?
Yeah, tell me about
Yeah.
it. So we're
I have
definitely
a
gonna.
feeling the obvious, Evan.
This is gonna look different next year. I hate to keep saying it, but I think some of this we're gonna have to live with to get through this cycle, and it's gonna be different because we can't figure it out either. It's been just a long time to get through to figure out what it is that we're actually talking about. So it's just not practical.
Before we go back to Bob, Sue, you have your hand up?
I did. I just wanted to say that was one of the reasons why we put fuel under one level in one line item, because there were several departments using it and it was all mixed up with every department. So we finally said, just put fuel under one account, and that was what we did. And so this makes sense as well.
Thank you, Sue. Bob, did you have a follow-up?
No, I agree with Evan. That's why I said what I said before.
Okay. Any other questions on the municipal center before we move on to the building department budget? Evan, you have your hand up, or is that still from left over? Oh, okay. Evan doesn't want to talk anymore.
He's out.
Moving on to building. Here we are. So Bob, if you want to walk us through that.
Sure. So, the department head, we already talked about taking that stipend, putting it over here. Plus I added 2% because I didn't want any confusion on that. Everything else is basically level funded. except for the increases for the union employees. And then that's on this top. And when we get to the bottom, we can talk about the bottom.
Okay.
If there are any,
Any,
if there are any questions.
Any questions on the personnel line for the building department? No? Okay, so expenses?
Yeah, can you bring that down? There you go. So conferences, because of COVID, I put it in half because I can't see us doing anything this year. But I still say it's very important for us to keep on going to these international conferences to see what the other parts of the country are doing.
Are they doing things now online, Bob?
We are, but and I'm also the founder of the Metros Building Officials, and my building inspectors, it's very difficult to get them in a Zoom meeting. They just don't want to participate. But we are doing it. It's really not much of a cost for the towns for us to get on a Zoom meeting, but we're not getting out of it what we were if we were having live speakers and talking about the hot topics with experts.
Seems to me if the numbers, if the meetings need to take place and you have a $500 shortfall, seems to me that we can either do a reserve fund or we can do a line item transfer or something to get you what you need for the to make
Right,
sure you
that-
attend. I agree with you. Those seminars are important. You need to stay on top of that stuff.
Absolutely. Communications, that's just, I don't know why it,
The lines just don't line up. It's just a formatting issue. Hey,
Oh.
everybody, I just want to make an announcement. Barry Smith has raised his hand. So we're gonna go right to Barry.
It took me an hour to find this. The string between the two cans was slack. That was the problem. Now I forget the question.
I'm sorry, Barry. I apologize.
Are we seeing more inspections and therefore more revenue for inspections over the last year?
well, we're seeing more permits because everybody's at home and everybody's working at home and everybody wants their own office because their kids are driving them crazy.
Yep.
We're seeing more inspections and we're going to start going back to live inspections now that my inspectors are vaccinated. We're doing it by electronic means, any means possible to keep everybody safe. And the reason why I say that is because when this pandemic first started, I didn't want to go into Mary's house, and I'm just using that name. And I don't have the virus, but I picked it up from Mary's house. Then I go to Grandma Smith's house, and I just traveled it over to Grandma Smith's. So I was looking out for our inspectors, but I was also absolutely looking out for the people that we're inspecting. So like I said, we're all vaccinated and we're all going to go back to in-person inspections. We brought in probably double the amount of fees that we did the prior year. So it's been a great year. We have about 700 permits, but overall, not including electric, plumbing, and gas, we have about 1,000 miscellaneous types of building permits out there for fiscal year 2021.
Wow.
So it's been crazy. It's been absolutely crazy.
Sounds like it. Any other questions on building? All right, moving along to the various inspectors. Start with gas.
Well, basically, it's just level funded, and I'm like a broken record here. These positions get paid hourly. They're funded out of the revenues that come in for their associated permits. So this $11,500, I'm just going to pick that number for the department head. If we go over and we have to have a cash transfer, well, it's because we had more permits, and I can show the finance committee, which I have in the past, that the reason why is because a gas main got in some street and we've got 50 extra inspections that we didn't count on. It's almost like snow removal. You budget a little bit and hopefully it's going to get you through. But if it doesn't, well, you're going to have to make an adjustment through the year. But with snow, you're not getting revenue out of it. With gas permits, you are. And over the past 20 years, we have never been in a deficit on any of my mechanical inspectors.
So we don't pay, so I'm confused here for a second. So we pay an hourly rate. We don't pay a per inspection fee
No,
to the
no,
inspectors?
no. At one time, we were a stipend. right? And I actually, back in 2000, I was the electrical inspector, and I was getting $21,000 for a stipend. And I could do one inspection, or I could do 1,500 inspections, and I'm gonna still get that $2,100 or $21,000. And then 15 years ago, I think, we decided, okay, this isn't gonna work because we're either too busy or we're not busy enough to justify that. And we had all these meetings and we decided we're gonna go with an hourly rate. And the hourly rate has been working out for the past 15 years.
Perfect, perfect. Any questions on gas inspector from anyone? All right, moving on to, I think plumbing is next, right? There we go.
It's all gonna be,
All the
it's
same?
all the same spiel.
Okay, and then the final one is the, what do we got
See,
here?
I'm
Plumbing,
not
gas,
seals and
wiring.
weight.
Nope, the next one is wiring, so same
Same.
spiel on wiring.
Yeah.
Okay. Any questions? Go ahead, Barry.
I found the button.
I know, I love it. That's why, that's what the button's there for. That way I can see you.
Bob, I forgot to ask this in our meeting. Are we involved in inspecting the Grafton Upton Railroad propane depot?
For the electric aspect is the only thing that I think that we inspect. I don't have any jurisdiction over that.
Okay.
All right, and Bob, you also handle cable?
I do handle cable.
So let me get that
I do.
back up on the screen. That is, I try to make everybody dizzy, by the way, by doing this.
I don't look, I turn away.
I'm almost there. Hey, Evan, if I can make a request, if you can put these in the order of the department head as they come in, make my job a lot easier. I'm just kidding, whatever you have to do. Where's cable? It says page 150. I have it on here.
No, it's 166 is the department, so it's all the
Oh,
way up.
166.
Yeah, it's
Sorry.
page 53.
Oh, page 53.
Yep.
Oh. Then I can't read the notes that I have here. I'm gonna, hold on one second here. This is
Page 50.
page 50. All right, go back. So you all don't have to watch me zip through this.
Yeah, we're using a Word document and these always go a little better when you use the PDF. It also fixes some of the formatting with the lines.
I will do that the next time, I promise.
Oh, well, that's not you.
It was my error on the 150. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Well, you know something? I'm not gonna make us sit here and watch me go through this. Bob, talk to us about cable because I'm confused every year. We have a town portion of the cable budget and we have the money that comes from the cable revenues.
Right,
So
so my
ahead.
understanding is we fund cable through the town of $3,000. And every year we've been throwing $3,000 into that account. And at the end of the year, we use that $3,000 because
What do
we
you
have
use
to
that
use it up.
3,000 for?
We use it for office supplies. We use it for whatever we have to use it for. All right, but can I share my screen?
Yeah, go ahead. That would, you absolutely, please do.
All right, I gotta find my mouse. I lost it. And
Cable
we're
is
go-
a special revenue fund, the 29.
That's right. But I want to go to this screen first, then I'm going to go to the other screen. Can everybody see this screen, the spreadsheet,
I can see nothing.
or is it too small?
It's
Nothing
black.
there.
All it says is you're sharing your screen and there's nothing that you're sharing.
Really? I'll stop the share. We'll try that again.
Try the raise hand button. Works for me.
Thank you, Beth.
Oh, program is going to close. Uh-oh, we got a problem.
Did we lose Bob?
I think we did. And we have his screen share, and there's no way for me to stop sharing his screen.
Oh,
The way that, so when I talked to him, if he explains it the way he explained it to me, it would make a lot more sense to everybody who is on this committee. So let me, until he gets back, let me explain what he said to me. So they get 5% of all the revenues for Charter and Verizon. So Charter and Verizon gives the town 5% of all the cable bills. Oh, was he back? Okay.
No, I knocked him off.
Okay, and then from there is how we fund anything that goes on with the cable. So currently, I believe we have about $500,000 in that account. Every year he asks for money to be used from that account, and this year he's asked for about $335,000. He can break down what it's for, but it's for like rent, personnel, services, supplies, all that stuff. But he'd be able to explain, that's probably what he was trying to show you, was the breakdown of everything. But I don't know how that $3,000 that's sitting on that we all see in the budget, he couldn't explain how that came about. I don't know if it's like a percentage of something, and I don't know why it's there, because I don't understand why he has that, because when he asked for the warrant, he uses it for supplies, and which is what he's saying he uses the $3,000 for. So I don't know if it's like there's some sort of contract that we have to have with Charter and Verizon and the town, that we have to have something in the budget aside from what we use in this.
Yeah, that's what that was gonna be my question, because if the total cost of the department comes from the cable revenues, why is the town contributing anything, whether it's $100 or $10,000?
Exactly, I don't know, and he wasn't, he said he wasn't 100% sure. So I don't know, because he was able to, he broke down exactly what he has for the warrant and why he needs that money, which was great, but I don't know what the 3,000, I mean, it's kind of like silly, like, why do you have, I don't understand what that 3,000 is for.
Yeah, because if you have the cable revenues supporting it, well, why is there any tax money involved?
Exactly,
whatsoever?
I don't know.
Irene, I see your hand is up. Go ahead.
If you look at this, what this is called is the Oversight Committee. Okay, so in other words, this isn't the cable department itself. Okay, this is called the Grafton Cable Television Oversight Committee. So that's why we would be paying. I'm trying to come up with a good comparison.
So you're saying that the operation, Bob DeToma's operation, is paid for out of the revenues, and then there's a committee that oversees the cable operation. Okay, I see Evans bobbing it. Okay, that makes sense to me now. All right, so now I know why we have the 3,000. Okay. Thank you, Irene. Go ahead, Evan.
So Bob just called me. His internet went out. So it's unlikely that he's going to come back. I told him that that it was being explained and everybody was kind of.
Oh, we lost Evan.
Okay, Mark, I'm just reading. I'm reading a sentence here. Cable TV budget from operating expenses is increasing due to standard increases in supply cost. The Cable Oversight Committee will present a full budget at town meeting, which is covered by cable franchise fees and separate from the operating budget. So I think, if I'm reading this correctly, this budget, which is very small, is just for
the committee.
Yeah.
What I would like, and Mary, we lost Evan. So Mary, I'm gonna ask you the question, if you can, for us going into next week when you guys come back on the cable budget, because I'd like to understand exactly where we're spending the money. I know we have debt service payment for the new studio. We have personnel, Bob DeToma and his staff that we're paying for. I'd like to have a full understanding of the cable budget, how that's paid, what the anticipated revenues are coming in, how the revolving fund is going to work, and the like. If you can have that for us next week, I'd really appreciate that. I think we should. I've been on the finance committee for 4 years, and I don't understand exactly how the town breaks it out and what the costs are. So I'd like to see that, if that's okay with you. Sue, I see your hand is up.
I do remember one time talking to Bob, because we asked the same questions several times about the cable TV, but they are required, the town is required to have a budget for them. So that's how we end up with $3,000. it's required by, however their contracts are or whatever it is.
So it has to be a contract with, it has to be a contract with the cable companies because there's no state law that says we have to have a budget for cable. I don't
Right.
believe so.
That's-
Barry?
That's what I understand. That's
Yeah.
why it's the budget.
That's what he was
I
saying.
think that's
So
what Heather was saying before.
That's what he was saying. He was saying that he knows that he doesn't know why it's $3,000. He just knows that it is a requirement that the town pays for this.
I'm
And he's
back.
saying that the 3,000 he uses for supplies. Like,
You are, Bob.
is he back? Okay, good.
I'm
So
back.
give you
I'm
the
sorry.
detail of everything. I was trying to explain everything that you had told me, Bob, so you'll do a better job.
So Bob, just so you know where we are, and then we'll go to Barry because he has his hand up. And go, Paul, you were 100% right. I'm so sorry I taught him that.
I think Barry pushed me
I'm just
off.
kidding, Barry. So Bob, so Bob, the thing that we're trying to understand, and I asked Mary for next week, when they come back, is we have the cable budget that pays for the cable studio, pays the debt service, pays Bob DeTome and his staff costs. Then you have the $3,000 for the cable oversight committee. And from what Heather is telling us and what Irene is telling us, there's a requirement in the cable contract that we have to cover certain costs. So that's why we have that $3,000 budgeted. I'd like to see once and for all a full accounting of the cable budget because it's never contained in the operating budget. And we don't know why it's funded the way it is. And so I'd like to get that understanding. And so I
now
asked
I'm
that
not,
for next week.
I understand. Now, in 2016, town meeting voted Mass General Law 53 something. I don't want to share my screen because it could freeze up again. And that's a warrant article that has to be voted on the town. You guys remember we did that for the past 3 years. There's
Yeah, that's what
also
we've
a
all done.
go ahead, Mark.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry. I
Okay.
didn't mean to interrupt.
There's also a document that I think the town administrator has, and I showed to everybody. I have a full accounting of what we did last year. And that's how I base our monies of the request for this year. I'm gonna pull it up, but I'm not gonna share it because I'm afraid something's gonna happen.
Yeah, Bob, if you just give them, like you gave me, the breakdown,
I'm
like the
going to, right.
166 for the rent and the cable and the bond payment and all that, that might help. That will be helpful.
Yep, I got to, because I rebooted and I went back into town hall.
Bob, could you email me that document?
I can email the finance committee that document, absolutely.
Oh, no, send it to Mary. Mary's asking for it.
I can email Mary that document.
And also, do you have the contract for the cable?
Yeah, the town administrator has that.
Okay,
That's the brand new license agreement that we just signed.
okay, I'll get it from their office. Thank you.
But you have two of them. You have Verizon and you have Charter.
Okay.
Barry, before Bob goes on, you had your hand up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't want to confuse this whole thing. The cable TV operation is defined as a 29 account, which is a special revenue account, which means the money we get from Verizon and Charter goes strictly into the cable TV operation. It cannot go to the general budget.
Understood.
So that's pretty much what everybody is saying. And
I just want to see, Barry, I just want to see the budget. I've never
Yes.
seen in 4 years on the FinCom, I've never seen the cable
yes,
budget. I'd
that's
like
a
to see
double
it.
secret that you have to know the password.
All right, any other questions on cable? I know, Mary, thank you very much. If you can get that information for us, that would be great. Any other questions for Bob?
Yeah, let me see if I can get this document up and then I can just read it off to everybody.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I have the document up right now. And for non-energy and energy, we spend $166,250. What that covers is Comtract. That's our fiber network maintenance agreement. So if somebody hits a telephone pole, they'll put it back up. That's $15,000. We have NSTAR for $3,000. That's for the studio. We have the electric bill, $5,000. We have the bond payment, $127,750.
How many more
Yep.
years we have on that bond payment, Bob?
I think you have 3 more years because I structured that to meet the Verizon agreement, which was 5 years. So that bond was only 5 years.
It was a 5-year bond. Okay, thank
That's
you.
right. And we put $1.1 million in that building.
Yep.
Rent on the building paid to the select board is $15,000 a year, and sewer. Add those numbers up, comes up to $166,250. Personnel, you have Bob DeTomer, you have John, and you have Bill. 5319 and 20, and then I have $5,000 worth of overtime. It's $98,929.76. Purchase of services, and that covers the attorneys, all the equipment we have yearly renewals on it. American Alarm, a cleaning service, pest control, broadcast picks. All that adds up to $28,172.56. Then we have $38,000 for supplies. And I have nothing down there right now. That's almost like a slush fund. If a camera breaks, if a server breaks, if whatever we need to keep the studio running to produce television, I'm just saying $38,000 is that number. With all that being said, you add those numbers up and it's $331,352.32. And that's why I'm requesting $335,000. Now, this will work like our municipal budget. For some reason, if we overspend, well, in our May town meeting, we'll have a special meeting and we'll ask to transfer from our 29 account back into this account, because the town has to vote on how much money we spend. So we're setting 335, but we're never going to be asking for free cash to be transferred over, because we have about $500,000-$600,000 in our account right now.
All right, so let me ask you a question. I know we're doing it as Barry said, the special revenue 53, whatever. Is there any discussion ever to just make this an enterprise fund?
You know,
It seems to be fully funded.
I don't know. That question's over my head, because I don't know what the real pros and cons are on both those. But this is a 29 account, which is a revolving account.
Yep.
I don't know what the advantages would be.
Mary, do you have any experience with that as far as cable departments being enterprise funds?
No, I don't. But it does make sense, because then you can shift the 3,000 over to the enterprise fund.
That's what I'm thinking. Because, I don't know why we have a separate line item. It's just way confusing. And this is the first time that I've heard such detail, or maybe I just forget such detail on exactly what it costs to run the cable company, because we've never seen that budget ever, at least in the 4 years I've been here.
I have been producing this budget since 2000.
Oh, I'm sure you have.
But these documents, it just never got forwarded over to you.
We've never seen him, Bob. I
Right.
know you've been doing it, obviously, because the cable company is the cable department is very successful. They do a great job. We have a beautiful studio.
Yep.
But I don't know, Sue, Heather, you guys have been on the committee forever.
No, that's
not
why I
so new.
asked here. That's exactly why I asked Bob for detail. I'm like, you know what? I don't really know what the money is used for.
We've
So,
never,
I
se-
was
we've never
glad that he
seen it.
gave-
So
Yeah.
Never
it's
seen.
nice to see those numbers. And Bob,
Yeah.
thank you very much for giving us those numbers. Sue,
And,
did you?
and just one more thing, 2020 payments from Verizon and cable. I don't know if that was brought up. I'm looking at payments of $360,000 for the year. So
That's how
we're
much you've
bringing
taken
in
in fees?
360.
Okay, perfect. That's the type of information that I was hoping to see. So thank you very much for presenting that to us.
Okay.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Dan.
Yeah, I just want to say I feel like I've been thinking lately on a few occasions for a few different pieces of our town government. Why isn't that an enterprise fund? I feel like that question's come up a few times, and I wonder if that might be something worth looking into, after town meeting and after the election, and just kind of, it's sort of in the off season, if you will, just kind of thinking about, maybe making better use of that tool.
Yeah,
The only thing
absolutely. Go ahead, Heather.
The only thing I'm thinking is maybe it's in our with Charter and Verizon, something saying that you can't, I don't know. I don't know.
I
'Cause
don't think they would
think
care.
that we would have brought this up earlier, because it just seems like it does. So it's a self-funding.
Yeah, the thing with an enterprise fund, yeah, it is self-funding. If we show a history that they have taken in X amount of dollars each year to support the budget, and they've never had a shortfall, once you make the decision to go to enterprise, you have to do it for a minimum of, what is it, Mary, 3 years, I think, before you can back out of it. So you want to make sure that you have the history to support that it is an enterprise fund. So it seems to me that every year they're taking in X amount of dollars, and they got 500,000 sitting in their reserve account. So it seems to me that it would make sense to do that. Go ahead, Evan.
Mary can jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought there was a change during the Municipal Modernization Act that dictated where we put our PEG access funds, and that it could not go into an enterprise fund.
Yeah.
No, that's not true. We have an enterprise fund in Groton for cable.
Okay.
No, Evan,
It
I
was-
think you were mistaken. We had it in general fund in Munson, and then
Oh.
we had to change it. It had to go either into a special revenue or an enterprise.
Okay. Okay.
Ours is very little. We just put it in a revolving.
Okay. Thank you.
There's a
Sorry about
huge
that.
There's a huge department here in
It-
Grafton.
Yeah.
My only concern is, and I don't know if it might not affect us in a 3-year term, is that are people getting rid of their cable? I don't know.
We'd want to
don't-
see, you're right, Heather, we'd want to see an analysis of the revenues over the last several years versus what they're spending before
Yeah.
we make the decision, because once you go into it, it's going to you have to stay there for 3 years. But either way, the general fund will have to make up any deficit in those accounts, one way or the other, whether it's a special revenue fund or an enterprise fund. I just think accounting wise, it would make sense to have its own entity as an enterprise
Agreed.
fund.
Agreed.
All right, anything else for Bob?
Well, actually,
Go ahead.
I just want to say a couple things. Evan, I have an article that was forwarded over to you. I think we talked about it. It doesn't have a number on it, but with our May town meeting coming up, we got to make sure that this article gets in there. If you don't have it, I will get it to you.
What is it, Bob?
It's
can't remember.
article FY22 for cable television to see if the town will vote to appropriate a sum of money to
Oh,
fund the
okay. Yeah,
recommended
yeah.
blah, blah, blah.
Got it.
Okay.
Yep.
So I did give it to your office, but that was before you actually showed up. Glad to
Okay,
have you
I'm-
on board.
Thank you.
All right.
That seems to be a recurring theme, that people are happy you're on board, Evan. I like it.
Oh, absolutely.
That's good.
So we do have South Grafton Community House.
Oh,
that
yeah,
We can
go
talk
ahead.
about if you want.
Yeah, please
And
do.
we can touch base a little bit if you want on One Grafton Common, which I don't think any of us have had a conversation on. But those are the two buildings that we could talk about if you wish.
Yeah, go ahead. Talk to us about the South Grafton Community House.
All right, South Grafton Community House, we do have a budget. You have it there. It's a little budget for general maintenance. Last year, we put some new carpets in. It's ongoing maintenance that we're just putting Band-Aids on here and there. But it's gonna get time where we're gonna need to throw maybe $30,000-$40,000 in that building. The past administration, for the past 4 or 5 years, I've been giving them projects. I've been pricing it. I've been getting out to bid. And then we get to a point where, okay, where are we gonna go? And it didn't go anywhere. So on the back of the building needs to be painted. You have some granite work that needs to be done. You've got some decks that need to be replaced. These are the projects that are going to come up in the next couple fiscal years, but we gotta start thinking how we're gonna fund it.
Have you talked to the capital planning committee on this? Because it seems to me that sounds like it should be part of the capital budget.
It should be, and that was in the corner office before Evan came in.
Okay,
So nothing happened now because, I've been in the middle of this pandemic.
understood. Go ahead, Irene.
I'm just curious, what events or activities are currently occurring in that building?
With the pandemic, none.
Okay,
Well,
prior to
you
that,
you
and
have
what would-
you have the VFW there, and you have the tribe rents the back. So those two entities are most likely still occupying their spaces. But
Okay.
as a town, we're not having any events because we can't get more than how many people in a room.
Right, but prior to that, or anticipated going forward, what events might I expect to see there next November, December, January?
Well, the past administration has held certain meetings, town meetings down there, not a town meeting, but, you know, gather the residents down there and have an open forum for one reason or another. We have
Okay.
rented the rooms out for weddings and other things like that. Other
Okay.
than that, I really don't know. It's a beautiful building. It's definitely a beautiful building. Why we have it? Because the townspeople didn't want to bulldoze that down. And I don't blame them. It's a beautiful building.
Heather?
Could community preservation help with any of these projects? I know we've been throwing that around for some of the buildings in town. Is that something that they could help with, Bob?
Is that a historic building?
Is that historic?
I don't know if it's on the list, but I think I think that we might have gotten money from that in the past when we had our DPW director work on that. I do have a meeting with Evan on Monday to talk about some various projects in town. I'll put this on my list to talk to him.
Anything else on that? All right, thanks, Bob. Appreciate
Wait a
your time
minute,
this
one more.
morning. We always,
Nope. We got
Yeah.
one. I see a hand up too.
I'm
one
sorry, I didn't mean to jump ahead.
One Grafton Common. It's just a conversation that
go
we
ahead.
should start talking about now. Apple Tree Arts did a lot of work. We threw $3 million into this building to make it handicap accessible. I don't know where Apple Tree Arts are with their fundraising, but my recollection says that they were supposed to be taking care of repointing the building and helping us replace all the windows. And now the building needs to be repainted again because we got money from the Historic Society. And now we're stuck with using wood instead of composite material. So every 5 years we have to do something. The building needs to be repointed. We need new windows. This is a huge conversation that we're starting, you know, right now at this minute, that there's probably $1 million worth of work that has to be put into that building. And
So
where
all
we're
the
gonna fund that,
renovation work,
I'm sorry.
so Bob, all the renovation work that was done on that building a couple of years ago, we still have another $1 million we need to spend?
All the work that was done on that building was on the interior. There was nothing done on the exterior. So
So
that
there's
means
$1 million worth of exterior work. Why wasn't that part of the overall? I mean, all of a sudden, we need to repoint the building and replace windows? That wasn't known?
it's not all of a sudden, that was part of,
That's my point. Why wasn't that part of the original project? I mean, why is this coming up now?
I can't answer that.
That's kind of outrageous.
If I'm not mistaken, that was part of Apple Tree's fundraising to get that part of the building up to par. We're talking 10, 15 years ago. This all started in the conversation.
Irene,
Sue had her hand up first.
oh,
Tough
sorry,
finding
Sue.
I don't know how I managed to jump in front of her, but she was up first.
Go ahead, Sue.
I just wanted to know if we're getting any revenue from Grafton One Common with all the rentals that are out there.
We are getting revenue, and the monies that we're getting now, you got to remember that's through Sean Pageant, because he's
Right.
managing the building right now on a private party, and he's taking that money and he's putting it into the maintenance of the interior of the building.
I'm going to follow up because that was my question was, wait a second, we gave somebody a private contract to run the building. Okay, so at what point is there anything in that contract that includes maintenance of the building? Or did we give someone a contract and say, oh, we'll maintain it 100%, just, you know, manage the rentals coming in?
But that's my point, Irene. We had this big hullabaloo. We ended up renovating the building. We ended up putting the building out. The town committed X amount of dollars. We took money from leftover high school construction money or whatever that was. We use it to build this building. If we knew we needed another $1 million at the time, Why wasn't that brought up when we did this 2 years ago, 3 years ago? That's outrageous. Now, all of a sudden, we have $1 million problem that the town is gonna have to step up and come up with money? That's ridiculous. I'm sorry, that really upsets me. Go ahead, Skip.
So it sounds to me like what Bob is saying is that that was part of the commitment from Apple Tree Arts some time ago, and their feet have to be held to the fire.
All right, if that's the case, then then that should be the case, because as a taxpayer, I'm not ready to spend $1 million more on there when you have private entities in that building. Are there any public is there any public department in that building right now? Or is it
No.
all private entities?
It's all private entities right now.
Yeah, so I'm not gonna spend a dime. I will fight this on the floor of town meeting if anybody says we need to spend $1 million upkeeping a building to help private businesses. That's
Right.
outrageous.
But you got to remember, it's still it's still our building, and I don't want to see it fall apart again.
I understand.
And I
that.
don't know
There
where-
should have
and
been a-
right,
then
I
there
don't know
should have
where
been a
we're going.
different plan, then there should have been a different plan presented to the town years ago.
Right.
Sue,
I
you
don't
still
know.
have
I
your
don't know
hand
where
up.
we're going to end up going with this.
I've never seen any revenue sheet from this building. How much revenue do we get? I know he handles it for maintenance, but what is the amount?
You know, again, I'm going to have a meeting with Evan Monday morning, and I think this is just going to be the start of a conversation that we're going to keep on having to try to get to the bottom of what happened, when it happened, and what is the responsibility of the town.
Dan,
I was gonna ask the same thing about the operating side of the building, and just, yeah, I feel like it sounds very muddied to me what the town's responsibilities are in terms of maintenance and what the money is coming in and where that money is going and then who's using it. So yeah, I would like to see all that just very clearly laid out.
I agree 100%. Aren't you glad you wanted to bring up that one last topic, Bob?
But you know what? If I get in trouble, okay, but I think it was a conversation that had to start.
I agree.
All right.
No, I agree. I'm glad you brought it up. It's
Because,
just,
you know, driving around the building, you see that there's, you know, yeah, we have to replace the wood. The wood's starting to rot again. Every 5 years, you have maintenance on that building. You have to paint. If you don't paint, then it's going to turn to rot. In the bricks and the windows. It's all been the same theme for the outside.
so I think the point that Skip mentions in the chat function, that there has to be a contract, and I think I would like, Evan, if it's possible, to see a copy of the contract for that building to understand exactly what the town's issues are with it, because I'm just concerned. Well, all of a sudden, we need $1 million, and that was never discussed with us.
You're concerned. I just learned we have another property.
You mean, Heather, go ahead.
I just want, because I don't have my schedule in front of me, so I apologize. The firehouse, I haven't gotten in touch with Skip, but I know when I had spoken to Bob this week, I'm assuming he probably knows the condition of the building and if it needs any work. So if he could, I don't, Bob, I could be throwing you under the bus.
Well,
but
Skip's here for that. Skip's here for that. If you want to,
No,
well, Bob's
No, it's a
here.
different Skip.
We can talk about it now.
It's a different Skip.
It's a different Skip.
Oh, it's a different, well, oh, he's got Nelson. I'm sorry. You're right.
left
You're right.
Yeah, I left messages for Skip, but he never called me back. And it's not a huge budget. I just want to, but it's an older building, so I just want to make sure. Bob had said he thought it was fine. I just want to double check.
I don't think we're going to have a problem with that building. In the past, I put a roof in it. We put a new boiler in it. It's just really a little tiny museum. I think that we're fine, but you know what? I'll send one of my guys in there this week. We'll take a walk around. We'll take a look. And we'll report back to Evan on this. But I think that your budget's fine on that.
All right, I appreciate that. Thanks, Bob.
Yep.
All right. Any other questions for Bob while he's here? All right, Bob, thank you so much. Oh, go ahead, Barry. Sorry, didn't see you. Yep, I see the hand. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, Lord. Am I here just for entertainment? You're
Yes,
talking
you are.
about the Farnhamsville Fire Station.
Yes.
I just went on the Grafton town website looking for Farnhamsville Fire Station. and found nothing. I don't know when it's open. I know where it is. It's near the new Fancy House of Pizza. I also Googled it. I couldn't find anything on there that said anything about the Farnhamville Fire Station. So I guess this is a message for whoever manages the town website. Maybe we should have a little description, a little page that says something about it. That's all.
Fair point. All right. Anything else for Bob? Oh,
You
go
got
ahead,
Dan.
Dan. Dan's got his hand up.
Yeah, excuse me. I happen to be on the Farnhamville Firehouse Museum committee along with Skip, and it is in pretty good shape. He personally pretty much maintains it quite well. I think the budget's in good shape. And that's a great suggestion, Barry, to try to get some publicity on the town site. So we'll bring that up at the next meeting.
Go ahead, Heather.
That is going to be another one of my comments when we talk to the Skip that's on this Zoom is how much work, Dan, how much personal work does he do at the firehouse? Because it just makes me nervous that when he leaves town and somebody else takes over, that we're going to see a much larger need for funds. So can you speak to that?
I know he checks in on it quite frequently, and certainly after snowstorms, and it's only open about 3 or 4 times a year, for the holidays, festivities, and things like that. But again, that's another good point. We should look at the continuation of care there down the road. So I think at our next meeting, we only meet twice a year anyway, but we'll bring that up and see what would happen down the road in terms of maintenance, and we'll put that on the next agenda.
Yeah, I mean, I see his car there all the time. So I just want to make sure that, when he's not able, that it does, and I don't think it's going to fall apart, but I just want to make sure that we're not going to see a much larger, a huge spike in the needs for fund.
Sure, I get that. Thanks.
Sue Robbins.
I just wanted to say that Skip has put a lot of his own money into these buildings, both the South Community House and the fire station. And he's done that for a very, very long time. And a lot of times he doesn't even use his budget. So I have to compliment Skip for all of the time and effort that he puts in expense and maintenance of these buildings.
Well, that's my point, Sue. I know, and because I've talked, I've been doing this department for a long time, and I know he puts a lot of time and money into it. So I just want to make sure that the town is aware, or not even the town, just this group is aware. Evan and Mary, they're aware that there might be some more fund necessary in the near future. That's all.
Right.
Skip Courier.
Yeah, I had met with Skip when I was on the finance committee in the past, along with the South Grafton Community House folks. Skip I tried to get him to learn how to use his budget. He pays for the stuff that he gets himself. I think that the only things that get paid for out of that line item or that budget is stuff that's paid by someone else, like utility bills and so forth. And I would venture a guess that he has not changed how he takes care of it since. I think if you asked him what he's paid out of the budget, it's been nothing, because he'll say he doesn't know how to get to it. Tried to coach him through it, but he has spent a lot of money of his own.
Yeah.
All right, we are running way behind. So I'm going to try to bring us back on schedule as best we can. So thank you, Bob, for everything. Good discussion. A lot of good information. I'm glad, Evan, thank you for that. And Evan, I look forward to your report on that once you get to the bottom of it. Candy, you have been very, very patient waiting. So let's move on to the town clerk's budget. And I will say, I want to apologize to Candy that this is my responsibility, and I just was out straight this week. So Andy jumped right in and did meet with Candy, but we're ready to go. And Candy, I'll share my screen, put your budget up on the screen if you want to walk us through your budget.
Sure. So, as you know, the town clerk and election has a smaller budget. And pretty much everything is level funded, you know, and actually I'll wait for the election to get into that, but the town clerk, everything's pretty much as it has been in the past. So as for salaries for myself and the two other employees in the office, we left it as is, as instructed. And Carter mentioned, you know, don't worry about that, just leave it. If we have funds, we'll, or, you know, whatever comes of that, we'll deal with it after the fact. So that's why everything is still the same under salary. There's one union person and Paul and myself are not. Overtime, I put at $2,500 just because unfortunately this year still has a lot of unknowns. So, you know, that will get us through what we need to do in-house and cover eventually if we continue with the Tuesday nights till 7, if we open up, you know, this will cover those additional hours that our office is open, you know, for whoever is working. And then Jane gets longevity. So that is the line item that stays in there for her. And then that's pretty much it with that stuff.
Hold on, any questions,
Oh.
questions on salaries and wages in the town clerk's office? All right, go on, Candy.
Professional and technical, this has pretty much stayed the same. The only difference this year is that our dog tag fee has gone up $75. And then the notary fee, last fiscal year we had for 2 people. This year we only need 1. So we reduced that by the $60. Acela went up from $1,200 to $1,248, so a $50 increase that started last year, but that roughly stayed the same. Conferences and seminars, I think we're in the same boat as pretty much everybody. We don't know what's going to come. They're trying to do a lot more online type of trainings, but you know, this past year was a difficult year to have that during you know, the September primary and November elections. So I'm anticipating that they will start up again with online at least trainings. And the Clerks Association does these mentor sessions for new clerks and staff that I've put in there to have Paul attend all 4 of those, which will be online. And I did 2 for myself, so there was a couple that I could go with him with it, but you know, I ended up ultimately taking those out of there, I believe. And then there's usually 4 main conferences that we have that would cover both Paul and myself, depending on what they do. They had a survey that went out asking if people would attend. So we're hoping to see something with that soon. Office supplies, pretty much the same as last year. It covers all of our expenses, you know, pens, toner, paper, envelopes, you name it. We do have seen an increase with vital records due to real IDs and just needing it for everything. So the paper for that is a little more expensive. And so, you know, I increased that last year and kept that the same. In-state travel would be if we were to go to the conferences that would cover both Paul and I having 2 separate rooms and any mileage. But again, I don't know what's going to come of that. I've kept it in there because it is important, not only to maintain your designations, but I think, you know, he's at the point where, you know, he would benefit from attending these as well. And dues and memberships are pretty much the same as well. We're part of the memberships and, you know, those are just yearly fees for that.
Oh, Paul, or I saw Gopal's hand up and then now Sue's hands up. Gopal, did you have a question?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
Okay, go ahead, Sue.
I just noticed under office supplies, are both you and Paul notary certified in being a notary?
Actually, all 3 of us are in the office.
Jane is too.
Yep, it was a requirement. I asked that when we hired whoever it is that we get it because we need it for there. So all 3 of us are notaries. I do have to reapply for mine. It expired in September. And I actually found out looking at the budget that there was about $100 and something reduced from our professional and technical that would have covered my notary fee for this year. So I'm just I'm sure I can find it out of office supplies, something just because we need it, but you know, that was taken out, but it's something that I feel needs to stay in there because our office does handle a lot of things with notaries.
So you do plan to get recertified?
Oh,
then?
yeah, we have to.
All
Yeah.
right, just checking. Thank you.
You're
Go
welcome.
Paul. Go Paul, you're muted.
Is the dog tags 475 the cost of getting the dog tags?
Yes, we order about 1,800 tags. So that's to get, yeah. So, yeah, we end up, that's the cost of what it is.
Oh, that's awesome. I didn't know that we had 1,800 dogs in the town. That's awesome.
Well, not everybody registers their dogs.
know.
We're working on that. But yeah, we do have a lot of dogs and we see, you know, some obviously it fluctuates when people leave or some dogs pass away, but people in town do have multiple dogs. So
awesome. Love it. Thanks.
Evan?
Yeah, I'm restoring that 5,300 line for the $100 or whatever it was.
Okay.
Oh, good.
Seems pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
The elections budget. Go ahead, Candy, walk us through that.
All right, so elections, the 5112 is the same thing. It's a stipend for the town clerk as serving as a registrar. That amount has been the same, I believe, since Donna was in office. I mean, it could go up, but I see no need in increasing that. The 5116 is the election wages, and this is what I want to kind of to bring up and talked with Andy a bit about is that a couple things. So first of all, our budget for elections in the past has been, it's kind of like peaks and mountains and plateaus, and you know, we depending on how many elections it goes up or it goes down. And speaking with Carter, he goes, I don't know why you do this, and he goes, this is, you know, you should keep your budget pretty much the same. That way, if you have things like your voting booths or signage, you have a little cushion to you know, replace those or get those. And so we talked, and I said, you know, that's how you do it. You know, the former, you know, administrator had a different view. We had some budget issues. So I'm hoping going forward, we can implement where we kind of keep the election budget kind of, you know, at a certain amount. That way we can, you know, cover anything that we would need to replace. After the census 2020 results come in, Grafton may end up with another precinct. So we would have to, you know, make sure we have enough supplies for that. We were told that our numbers, we look like we might end up gaining another one. I'm not 100% sure yet until we get that, which wouldn't go into effect until next year. But we do have some voting booths that we have in our storage, but those have been, you know, they're not usually used because they're older ones that were purchased in Maureen's time. So our election supplies too also are transported each election. So there is some wear and tear on them. So that's, you know, what I'm hoping to do with this budget. But also after talking with Carter, we're hoping to increase the rates for our election staff. Elections are becoming a little bit more complex. More and more is, you know, asked of our workers. I know it's not meant to supplement their, you know, income at all, but, you know, without these people, elections wouldn't run. So currently we pay our staff $9 if they're like checkers, and $9.50 for wardens and clerks. They do get an additional stipend, but I reached out to our sister communities and to see what they were paying theirs. And after doing that and speaking with Carter, we're hoping to raise people's rates to, you know, to be a little more significant and to, you know, let them know that they are getting paid for the duties that they are doing.
So Candy, following up on that point, fiscal 21, you spent $27,000 because you had two primaries, you had the presidential election, you had everything else going on. So would you say that 27,000, between 27 and 30,000 is the number that if we did that every year, that would be a consistent number instead of going up and down all the time?
I would say so. I would like to see it stay at, and we can figure it out. This was just, let's figure it out based on one. I think if we spent a little more time figuring out what it would be for the max amount of elections versus, the year when we don't have as many, and figure out a number, I would like to do that. That way we can, figure out or purchase things that we may need to.
And I agree with you. We should compensate the election workers at least at minimum wage.
Yes.
So I think you're right on that. We should probably take a look at that. Any questions for Candy on the town clerk? Go ahead, Andy.
Not a question, but a follow-up, something that came up in Candy and I's discussion. I was also in support of raising those wages. Candy said it'd been at least 5 years since anything.
5 to 10, yeah.
Possibly closer to 10 years since we've adjusted that wage, excuse me. And it does put us more in line with our sister communities. Not that we're, competing for services, but, in being fair to these people who are spending their time working these elections, I just thought it was worthwhile and worth noting that it's been a long time since we've adjusted that rate. I think I broke Mark.
I think he's looking at his watch.
I think you're up, Irene.
Okay, until Mark comes back, I will take over. So I think the last thing we were saying was, did anyone have other questions for Candy? And hold on for a second, because Candy, I did have somewhere. I've got the budget, but I don't know what page you were on. Guys, can someone tell me what budget page Candy is?
Elections is
Word document.
Elections is 50, page 50.
50. Okay, so give me a minute just to get there. Oops. I'm pulling a mark here and scrolling through, trying not to make myself dizzy. Oops. Okay, almost there. Okay, so here we go. So town clerk summary, we got through that. The detail. Okay, so I'll repeat. Does anyone have any more questions? If not, God, I hate to jump on this and be incorrect, but I'm going to assume that we are all set. Candy, when would we expect the census results?
I think they were pushing for the end of March, and I believe I saw something that it now might be more towards September. There was a delay, so honestly, it may be a few more months.
Now, once that comes through, how much time do we have to respond? So let's say that they give us our number and bingo, we need 6 precincts.
I think they'd reach out to us to let us know, and then we would have to start. So I'm not 100% sure. To be honest, I have not been involved with adding a precinct personally, but from what I understand, they do reach out to you and they would have to give you time. So it wouldn't start until, I believe, 2022.
Okay, so it's not like they would reach out and we'd have to have it done. If they told us in September that we'd have to have that done for the November election.
Right, right.
Okay. Which I actually don't think there is a November election for us this year.
No, we have one election so far this year, which is our local.
Right. Okay. Any other? So now what I'm looking at here is, I think we didn't get down to your expenses.
Irene, you're very quiet.
Oh, I'm terribly sorry. Can you hear me all now?
Yes.
Okay, you know what happens sometimes is I put my finger on the computer and I inevitably put it over the microphone. Thanks, Dan. Sorry about that. Okay, does anyone want me to share my screen so you can all see the numbers? Are you good?
We're good.
Okay, because I do have it up. So Candy, the next one on here is you have repairs and maintenance. We have ImageCast voting machines. You said you had purchased 2 additional machines and some poll pads.
So we've had the poll pads. It's just the maintenance agreement that we have that now that covers their yearly maintenance on it, but we did purchase 2 additional tabulators. Just because this past election year, there were some new implementations where there was like pre-processing of ballots and whatnot. So I spoke with Carter and I said, you know, we're getting them at a lower rate because we were with the company. We had some CARES Act and, you know, thinking that if we did gain another precinct, so we purchased 2 additional and that way we would have spares. So that's what that covers. But the poll pads, we've had the 5 that we have currently, and that's just the any maintenance that has to be done, service agreements.
I apologize. My
No problem.
internet went down. So
Mark, are you
Sue,
going to take over now?
I'm back. I
Okay.
apologize.
No problem.
Sue, did you have a
Or back to
question?
Mark
Yeah,
Hadden.
I don't have a question. I just want to make a comment that I just want to commend Paul while you were absent, Candy. He did a tremendous job during the last election. It was a really a big turnout. He did an excellent job, and he also did an excellent job when it came to town meeting. So I have to commend him. Considering he's pretty new, he did an excellent job. I'm very proud of him. So please
Good.
pass that on to him.
Absolutely. And not to take too much time with that, but, you know, we joke now. And I said, you know, it was the worst scenario that could have happened. But for him, I said it was the best because it gave you so much experience that, you know, nobody wants to get thrown into something, but, you know, and I also was making sure, like reaching out to Donna, who helped, and our association in the state, and it weighed heavily, but he did an amazing job with the circumstances. So I will definitely let him know.
Thank you, Candy. Thank you, Sue, for saying that. That's an excellent point. Anything else for Candy? All right, thank you very much, Candy. Go ahead,
I have a question.
please, go ahead.
So Candy, just looking at the budget real quick on the professional and technical,
Yes.
I'm seeing a huge change.
Oop, you're out again.
Oh, okay, so I'm seeing a huge change on professional and technical,
Yes.
where in 20 it was 28,000, in 21 it was 19,000, now it's down to 10.
Mhm.
Why is that?
So depending on the number of elections too, where we have to cover programming our cards for the tabulators. So we had a central tabulation facility for one of the elections, which increased the cost, but depending on the number of elections, you have some fees that you have to cover for programming your cards for each elections, the auto mark machines that we have, and then also the police, I believe I have in here, I do. So police services, we broke out the elections because of COVID into two locations within the precincts this year, which meant we had to add an additional police detail in each room. And unfortunately, we don't know who we're going to get for coverage. So it could be a sergeant, it could be, you know, just, I don't know their exact titles, but, you know, just regular entry level.
Officer.
Yes, thank you. So we don't know who we're getting and what their rates are going to be. So we kind of base it off the higher, but that's what, you know, some of the increase for that.
But
And
this cost will vary by year. So unlike the other cost, thinking we could even it out over the years to give ourselves a cushion for physical things. This one is purely services. And so if we're not going to need them, there's no sense building up a reserve.
correct.
Okay, so this is just going to vary year to year based on what's happening.
Yep.
And I'll assume that's similar for the office supplies. The fewer elections you're having, the fewer physical things you need. And these
Yes.
aren't things that could build up over time because they're election specific.
Well, some of them, the supplies, you know, we could, depending on, you know, what's offered, we could get some things in bulk. But for the most part, we try to keep that the same. And I know the past I've put in money for like signs and fans. So I believe it was fiscal 20. That was higher because we asked for fans and chairs and stuff. And then we brought it back down to what it is for just basic. Yeah.
Okay, I was curious why there was such a
Yeah.
big drop from 20 to 21.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that takes care of my questions.
Okay. And then the last
Thank
one
you,
is
Irene.
food. And
Anything
it's
else?
just food.
Go ahead. Anything else for Candy? Candy, thank you so much for taking time out of your Saturday to join us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a
Have a,
great
have a,
day.
have a great rest of the day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is the Board of Health. I see Dan's here and I see Nancy's here. So Dan, I'll share my screen and you can walk us through the budget if you'd like.
Sure, thanks. Actually, before we get to the numbers, there's some wording that has been on there for years that's actually incorrect, and it's not a big deal, but at some point in time,
You're
for
not
instance,
elected anymore.
what's that? Well, yeah, that's true.
You're not elected anymore, right?
We're appointed and we actually get $400 annually instead of the 200, but the extended number is correct. And up above that, just up above 5111, the description, there's one sentence that should be deleted, and it says this year the town will contract with the Health Alliance for Title V inspections services. And that actually happened in like 2015 or 16. Nancy would know. And I did ask Nancy to come on if there's specific questions about the numbers too, because she's in the day-to-day, month-to-month, and year-to-year. She's been here for 33 years. And in meeting with Dan C., you know, it's pretty cut and dry, I think, and pretty self-explanatory in the numbers. If you want to scroll down a little bit, the one number that was a little out of whack was the overtime. And as we all know, it was a pretty wild year this year. And Nancy certainly worked late and Saturdays and everything else. And it probably will continue, I suspect, through this fiscal year to a slight extent. So again, I don't know if there's any other questions, but I think it's a fairly straightforward budget.
Yeah, it hasn't changed. The 106,000 is our contract with the Central Mass Boards of Health to run the day-to-day stuff for you. Is that 106,000 the anticipated increase from them?
As far as I know, I have not personally been in touch with Karen Clark, but I think that's a certain percentage. I can't do that in my head, but it's like what, 2 to 3% or something. But in any event,
I think it's 2%. Yep.
yeah, and it's certainly reasonable. Again, after this past year that we had, I know they were on full alert 7 days a week. We were getting emails and joining Zooms with them, and their inspections were up considerably, and their educational visits about masking and all the other things that were going on. I think they certainly earned all that money this past year, and I don't think
no question
this crisis is going to go away for another 6 months. And be nice to get back to normal by the middle of the summer, but we will see, I guess.
We will. Sue Robbins, and then Evan.
I have two questions for Dan. One is, when is the Health Alliance contract up?
I believe it's this the end of this June.
Okay, and the second question, I'm sorry, did you want to finish?
Well, I think it was a 3-year contract, and I suspect they'll ask to renew for 3 years as well.
The second question is, do you receive from the Health Alliance a list of all the inspections that they have done in the town and what the rate or grades they've given these inspections?
We do. I'm going to ask Nancy to step up because she's the one that receives them and files them. Nancy, can you speak to that? If she's on. Nancy, I don't know if you can hear us, but you're on mute. But again, as far as I know, we do in fact, they actually, one of the inspectors actually visits, Phil retired this past January, but he was in town at least twice a week and would bring actual reports and send reports when he was working remotely. And Julie, who's taken his position and sort of designated to our town, is in touch 3 times a week. And they do give us all the reports for sure.
And does anybody from the Board of Health do any kind of inspection at all? From
We
town?
do not officially. We make recommendations individually to the inspectors that something might need attention or someone that seems to be not in non-compliance, and they take it from there.
Okay. Thank you.
Evan,
Oh, there we go. I did have a meeting, kind of a meet and greet with the Alliance last week, and started talks about how their contract is up in June, and they're probably going to be looking for. They iterated that they'd probably be looking for more than a 2%, but that was just a kind of an anecdotal conversation. It hasn't gone any farther than that.
so in terms of the negotiating with them, the Board of Health and you would start those negotiations, so that budget might have to get it amended, and I'm assuming we want to stay with them. We're not looking to do something in-house, right?
I have had no conversations with anybody about that aspect of it. It was really just a meet and greet. This is who we are. This is what we do. That kind of stuff. So as soon as we start negotiating, yeah, we'll be working with the Board of Health on that. And at this point, we're getting pretty close. It might have to be, if it's more than the 2%, we'd have to look at something in the fall, I think, probably.
Now, we had one of our attendees making a point that if we don't renew with them for whatever reason, then where do we go? What do we budget? I mean, for 106, or even if it's a 5% increase, 110,000 a year. If you were to try to bring in full-time staff to do that, you'd be paying a hell of a lot more than 110. So I think it makes sense to renew, but then again, we don't want to all of a sudden see a 90% increase in the cost either.
Right.
Go ahead, Dan, and then
Mark,
and then
yeah, I think it's a consensus on the board that we'd like to stay with the Alliance if it's financially feasible. Otherwise, to break it down to 4 or 5 independent contractors and then somebody who's going to be the clerk of the works communicating, they seem to be doing a very effective and efficient job at this point.
Yeah, I agree. Makes sense. Makes sense to stay there. Go ahead, Barry.
I think you answered Ed Prisby's question.
Yep,
Okay.
that's what I did. Yep. All right, good. Dan Kusher.
Yeah, I just want to go back to that overtime line item. It looks like from the expense reports that they're going to end up spending well over double that, the budgeted amount this year. And it sounded like that level of work is going to continue for at least, probably for at least the first half of the coming fiscal year. So I just want to point out that I don't think that what's currently budgeted for that is going to be enough. And when in our conversation, it also came up that Nancy has been working a lot of hours, and she was hoping to get some additional help. Where that money would come from is definitely an important question to answer, but I just wanted to make sure that that concern came out here.
Appreciate that, Dan. Okay, anything else for the Board of Health? All right, Dan and Nancy, thank you so much for coming in on a Saturday to meet with us. We appreciate it. And speaking as a resident of the town, I really appreciate everything the Board of Health has done to get us through this pandemic, because I know you've been putting in a lot of time, a lot of effort, and we really appreciate everything that your department has done for the town. So thank you very, very much to both you and Nancy, and the overtime is well worth it, because obviously Nancy's really been working hard for everybody. So thank you very much, Dan.
You're welcome, and thank you, and happy spring forward.
Same to you. Moving on, next up is the Capital Planning Committee. Colleen is here. So welcome, Colleen. And I know you sent me a couple of documents that you want me to share. Which one do you want up first?
The super colorful one, the 1-year budget, the FY22, not 5 year.
Of course, I opened up the wrong one. Give me one second. I'm new to this computer thing, and I've been messing it up all morning.
No problem.
This is the one you want here. Okay. Go down, share. Did I do it right?
Maybe
Is
it's
that the
black
one?
still. I don't see it,
Oh,
but I assume you, oh, there it is. There
Now
you
it
go.
is, okay.
sorry.
So this is what the committee came up with as a deliverable for the FY22 capital budget. It was, we revived an old Excel sheet that the committee first used when it started about 9 or 10 years ago. It hasn't been used in several years because the committee hadn't been receiving submission forms from department heads. So it was really nice to get back into seeing the submission forms. The planning department did a great job collecting, receiving them, and putting them all together for us and sent them over to us. We had a condensed timeline this year than we'll have in years going forward, but I still think we were able to work really hard to get a nice product to the town administrator. It's overwhelming to look at when you first see it, but the more you work with this document, it's a pretty fabulous document. The 5 criteria that we scored each submission on, we got directly from the DLS. The DLS provides a capital planning manual, so we stayed pretty true to that. So public safety and health, infrastructure efficiency, mandatory legal, and then impact on services and personnel. They're all weighted a little differently. So obviously mandatory legal is going to have a heavier weight, and that really helped to do the work for us, right? We all got a score sheet. We all individually scored how we wanted, uploaded all of our scores, and it just shook out how it shook out. And this is what we came up with. At the end, we gave a little bit further recommendation because, as you can see, George Hill is a very big project that may or may not get to this year. So in our narrative, we said maybe skip down and kind of fund maybe 12, 13, 14, and we'll come up with a better plan for George Hill once we have, the engineers involved and so on and so forth. I know that there's been a little more discussion about 46 Adams Road to possibly figure out a plan for that as well, but it just didn't make the list this year. I know Recreation also reached out because apparently they have been requesting the building at Silver Lake for several years, but as I previously said, CIPC has not been seeing submission forms, so that wasn't a metric for us this year. Going forward, the number of times something gets requested will absolutely be a weight factor, but unfortunately this year was kind of a hard reset for the committee.
So in
That was a
terms
lot
of
of work.
the budget, so in terms of the budget this year, you guys hear me?
It was, yep.
So in terms of the budget this year, how's it being funded? Some from the override, some from free cash? What's the breakdown?
I wish I had that number handy. I know a lot of it's free cash and some of it's from the override. Mr. Terenzini wanted to save as much of the override money as possible to start building reserve to help us get away from the lease culture that we've kind of found ourselves in, so that we can, buy our bigger purchases when we need them. But I don't have the exact breakdown of free cash versus override money.
Okay. Any questions for Colleen on what is presented here? Evan, have you had a chance to look at it, and are you comfortable with the proposal? Because at the end of the day, what goes to town meeting is your capital budget based on a recommendation from CIPC. Have you even had a chance to look at any of this?
Yes, so I have looked at it, and I did meet with CIPC on, I think it was Thursday night. And so we went over everything. I think they're doing a wonderful job. It's a really well done plan. My only recommendation, or the big one, is trying to get away from leasing, maybe going more towards the bonding route. But I think that we'll have some leeway there, because I think the way we need to write that warrant article will be an authorization to borrow, because leasing is borrowing. So I think we can write it as an authorization to borrow in a more broad term. And then when it comes time to actually pull the trigger on buying some of these things, see what the bond rate versus lease rate is at the time, and make a better financial decision at that time. But otherwise, I think it's fantastic. It's really great work.
No, they did. They worked hard this year, and they were given support to do their job this year, which was something that's different from the past. So I applaud the CIPC for their hard work and their ability to work with Carter and now with you moving forward. I would like to understand, though, when you finally put that article together, what the breakdown is between override money for this capital and from free cash. So at some point, I'd like to see that if that's possible. Sue Robbins?
I just wanted to clarify, Evan, on Thursday, when we talked about the police cruisers, were you going to make those changes this year in the budget or next year?
I don't know. I'd love to do it this year. Right now, with us being at a $55,000 deficit, I'm not sure. We have to kind of prioritize some things. So I'd love to get it back there, but that might be a year 2, year 3 conversation and build some capacity there. But that's where I'd like to see it.
All right, anything else for Colleen while she's here? Excellent. Colleen, thank you so much for coming in today on a Saturday. We appreciate it. And we thank you for the great plan and the good work that you and your committee has done to bring forward a really good capital plan that the town can build on for the next several years. So we appreciate it. And I'm sure Evan appreciates it as well.
problem.
So anything else for Colleen? Why is it always the biggest number budget always has the least amount of discussion? And we spend
Trying
more
to
time
get
on
you
the
guys
smaller
caught
ones.
back up. Don't ask any questions. Just keep going. You're behind.
Nothing to see.
Yeah, we are behind. So now we're almost back on time. We're only 15 minutes behind. So next up on the budget, we already talked about Farmersville Firehouse. Is there anybody here to directly address that? No? All right. So let's move on to the Nelson Park and Library. Skip Currier. How you doing?
Marvelous. And you all?
Happy to see you.
What questions does anyone have for this humongous budget?
Is the how is the building and everything maintenance wise and moving forward? Do we have any things that we need to worry about? I mean, previously we just heard about the one Grafton Common that all of a sudden we have $1 million that we didn't know about. Anything we need to worry about, Nelson Library?
No. Nope, not unless a drastic change happens with its use. If something, remodeling or something like that. But there's nothing on the proverbial horizon for that.
Well, that's good to know. Well, obviously this isn't a huge budget for us. Are there any questions for Skip moving forward? I mean, it's pretty much the same budget that we see each year. Go ahead, Barry.
Minor. Do we have schedule information on the town website as to when the library is actually open?
Well, it's been closed since last February.
Right.
And we try to have it open as it had been in the past. It's on our part of the town's website. But as we have lost the volunteers that had formerly staffed it, it has been open less in terms of being a library kind of facility.
So
I would expect the same when it quote unquote reopens.
yeah, are you looking for volunteers to staff the place or no?
Well, it's been kind of hard because again, we've been closed for last year.
All right.
Heather?
So when Skip and I spoke, he did mention that a lot of the women who were volunteering are no longer going to be able to be doing that. So that, I don't want the building just to sit. So I don't know if it's something that the town is going to have to discuss. I think in the Skip was saying that, obviously way back when the building and the land was given to us, it had to be used. It had a certain usage. I don't think that is any longer. Again, I think the documents would need to be read. But I think I don't want to see it not be a library, but I also don't want to see it be empty. So I think, Skip, you could discuss this. I just think it needs to be used. I think it's a great building. I think it's a great space. I know that there's sorry, Skip, I'm going to bring this up. The whole ADA checklist. I don't know if it's necessary that he had mentioned it, but it wasn't actually there's not actually somebody who's going out and fining the town because it's not ADA compliant. Go for it.
So as far as the ADA compliance goes, everybody seems to have received a copy of the report that was done. I am not aware of what the charge was to that committee. We don't seem to be bound to do anything in a mandatory fashion because we haven't done anything with the building that would trigger it to be updated. There's some minor maintenance issues, I guess I would call them. And it doesn't seem as though anybody's taking that report and doing anything about the easy to do stuff on a townwide basis. The things like doors not closing with the right hole pressure and stuff like that. I just don't know what anybody's doing with that. I don't know, again, what the charge was. So was the company that did the work charged with, go out and tell us everything that it's going to need to be, need to be done at town buildings to bring them all up to the current ADA code? Because you don't have to do anything unless you do hit dollar thresholds with renovations or new construction. So if you were to meet that report, there's several $100,000 worth of work that needs to be done at the park and building. So I don't know what the town's doing. They should have someone that is actively working that report if we're going to do anything with it, not just leave it up to individual boards and committees what they're doing with buildings that they maintain or have responsibility for.
Anything else, Heather?
Yeah. As far as the park will not revert to the family. That the ability for that to happen ended 30 or 40 years ago. So just that it be used as a park, library, meeting facility, something for the proverbial public good would be fine for the park proper. As far as the rest of the parcels of land that the trust owns or has control over, we could sell those if we wanted to do whatever to maintain that one piece of land there. Those are all treated like money in the bank or something under the will.
Evan?
Yeah, in regards to the ADA list, we are working on that. That's actually part of my conversation with Mr. Berger on Monday morning, is to review the document and come up with action steps. Whether or not it impacts this property, I haven't gone far enough into it at this point, but the committee is fairly active and did reach out to us and ask that we start prioritizing some of the compliance issues. So we'll be working on that shortly.
Thank you, Evan. Heather, did you have anything else?
I did. Well, Skip, you look concerned, Skip.
Oh, no, and the only comment that I make about that list is, so like if left to everyone's own devices, if everybody was going to fix that or respond to that report, everybody be out hiring a handyman to go out and buy stuff to measure how the doors close and measure grades and everything to see what they can do outside with parking lots and that kind of thing. So that's why just having a central person set up to deal with the issues that are raised in that report is really what needs to be done instead of having it farmed out to everybody.
I agree.
Heather, go ahead.
And then my next, and I don't know if Skip had brought this up, and I don't know if it's something that the Nelson Library Committee has to discuss, are the employees that do the work around the maintenance. Is that something, Skip, that I know that you said that these two individuals haven't really been given much of a raise, but I think you also were concerned about their motivation to work. So
it's not so much. Sorry,
their
Heather.
age, maybe it's their age and their ability.
I think it's their ability to do more vigorous tasks, I guess is what we should say. Unfortunately, having sat on the finance committee, it was my understanding that all of the non-represented, non-negotiated, non-individual contract employees kind of got a few percentage points of a raise every year. Apparently that stopped, or it stopped with the folks that work at the park because they haven't had a raise since 2018. And I didn't realize that until I was putting this together this year. So yeah, that's why I would like to see them get some kind of a raise. I had talked to Carter, but he did not respond about, giving them some sort of retroactive raise or something this past year, or I don't know, because we don't have a rate or number of hours that is put into our budget to say one way or the other. So okay, so we don't have enough money to give them a raise this year because we've used up all the money. Well, we just have a slug of money, and if we use all the hours up, then we use all the hours up, that kind of thing. So I would like to see them get something else.
But would it behoove you, Skip, at this, I agree about the raises, that I do agree about that. But would it, because obviously the building's getting older and I guess we're at a point where we have to discuss payroll, would it be smart to maybe start looking for two younger individuals, or are you?
I think what we have to do is get a little more direction for them. And that, as I kind of implied, not being tied to a salary position anymore, as opposed to being retired or anything. I will be down there far more frequently during the day and working with them to get more stuff done, other than just mowing the lawns.
But again, we're going to run into the other Skip issue at the firehouse. How much work are you actually doing down there on your own time?
Boatload.
So when you can't, again, I know you're a young one. When you're not a young one anymore, it's gonna be a hit.
It kind of is what it is there, but by then, those guys will have replaced themselves. One of the guys is in his 70s, I think, well, very late 60s, and the other person just had his knee redone or one of his hips redone. So I'm not sure whether they're both going to be back this spring or not.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to bring that up because I think that, again, I get nervous with all these, with all, with your, I don't want to say your generation, because it's not like that you're that much older than me, but that you all put so much work and your own money into these buildings, but at some point it's not going to happen anymore. So I just get nervous. That's all. I just want to bring it up.
To quantify how much time I spend, it's probably a few hundred hours a year.
Well, you have a lot of buildings in this town that are maintained by volunteers and not by the town itself. It seems to me that while volunteerism is great and municipal government doesn't work without volunteers, if you depend too heavily on them and they're no longer there, the town is all of a sudden going to be in a situation where, oh boy, what are we going to do?
And that's the only reason why I'm bringing this up, Mark. That's why I'm bringing this up.
Heather, I'm with you. I'm with you 1,000,000%. I think maybe part of what the capital planning committee needs to do and Evan needs to do is maybe figure out a plan moving forward to address these situations when these volunteers can't do the work anymore. I mean, we're trying to rebuild the members of the Nelson Park Committee by giving them new knees and hips.
So we don't have to do anything to the building. The building is, other than going down, I throw the snow blower in the back of the pickup truck and take it down and clear away the stuff that the highway department leaves, like when they plow the lots so that people can get into and out of the building. But as far as actually maintaining the building, this year with it being closed, I've spent a lot of time getting rid of stuff that has been there since the library ran the building. So, magazines for 20 years ago really don't cut the mustard anymore. And Mark just ran away again.
I think Irene's up again.
I think Irene's up again, but I just think because we didn't use the fields, for example, last year, and these two gentlemen were not able to mow as much as they should have mowed. It sort of worked out timing wise, but this year, knock on wood, they will be able to be playing softball and baseball and flag football and all that. The fields are gonna have to be mowed more than once a week, and I would, and Skip's the one who's been doing it. So I just think,
So Heather, they have been doing the mowing. It's the other heavier work that I've been doing, like all the trees and the storm damage and all that stuff, cleaning up. I've done that, and the highway department's been great about coming up and taking the butt logs and chipping all the stuff and everything. But these guys aren't really capable of doing that stuff. And it's just something that we got to deal with.
So Heather, more questions? You all set? Okay, then Sue Robbins.
Andy was first. Let him go.
Oh, was he? I'm sorry. Okay. Andy.
Thank you, Sue. Skip, my question is, and I know I don't want to harp on recruiting more volunteers or the need to recruit more volunteers, weighing solely on that, I guess is what I'm saying. But is this a situation where you could take, if somebody volunteered off the street to help out, at certain times or provide certain services throughout the course of the season, not necessarily a dedicated schedule, but something like that. Is there an issue with any sort of like licensing for running equipment or liability? Is this like that we have to pull from kind of a pre-screened group of volunteers, or is it open to like general public to come offer their services?
If the general public wanted to volunteer to say have the library, staff the library in a clerical nature, that'd be fine. We could certainly work with them scheduling. But as far as maintaining the property, I don't think I'd want to have them doing that.
Okay. I'm wondering, and I certainly wouldn't want to speak for any of them, but having some involvement with the local scout troops and packs, if there's an opportunity, they're constantly looking for public service engagements. If there's something, possibly like a cleanup that could happen semi-annually or something like that we may be able to suggest and be mutually beneficial.
If a group like that wanted to present something to us, we'd certainly welcome that. It's happened in the past on a number of occasions.
Great.
Sue?
Skip, you mentioned that the Nelson Library has more property. I think 40 acres you mentioned. I mean, if we looked at selling off some of that property to be able to make capital improvements to that building, that might be one solution we could work at. Is that correct?
It would be some of the land some other committees have expressed interest in just for preservation, but no sense in transferring it from one place to another for preservation. Some of it's also kind of useless land, but there's some out there.
So what you're saying is we couldn't sell it off to do major capital improvements to the building then?
Not if we were going to do anything. No, there's no real plan to do any capital improvements there. Everything that is there, the envelope of the building is in pretty good shape. And the only issue that we've had with it was that stupid furnace this fall or winter.
Which we took care of.
Yep.
Evan?
Is there a history to why the town doesn't maintain the park with its other parks?
Yes, and we could talk about that offline, but Mr. Nelson left.
Okay.
Mr. Nelson left that to the town to be operated by the trustees.
Okay, understood. We'll have to catch up, you and I, and I'd love to see the space and know what I'm talking about and talk through all of that, because we haven't.
Anytime.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it.
Anything else for Skip? All right, thank you, Skip. I appreciate it. That concludes our budget reviews for today. Before we go on to the next agenda subject, going into next week, our next meeting is next Saturday, correct? At 8:30, Sue Biacco?
That would be
Yes?
correct.
Okay, so let me ask Greg and Skip have been here all morning waiting, and I'm sure our other applicant will be on shortly. Do we want to take a break a 5-minute break before we get into the interviews? Or do we want to jump right into it? What's the preference of the finance committee?
I would like a break.
Okay, so right now it's 11:35, so why don't we take a 10-minute break and come back at 11:45 and we'll start the interviews. We'll start with Skip and then go to Greg and then Angelina. So see you all back here in 10 minutes. All right, it's 11:45. We're all back. So I'll call us back into order. And it is now time to conduct our interviews. Angelina, thanks for joining us. We're running a little bit behind schedule this morning, so thank you for being here. We have we're gonna start with the order that we have on the agenda. And first up is Skip Currier. So Skip, thank you for being here this morning. We appreciate your interest in serving on the Finance Committee. So why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, why you want to serve on the FinCom, and then we'll open it up to questions. So the floor is yours.
So as to why, I'm not really sure, having spent about 13 years doing it already, I believe somewhere along that line. I've just been interested in town stuff. I started on the fire department in 1977, was on the Board of Health for 11 or 12 years, who knows exactly how many years. The same goes for the Finance Committee. I just found that in my last stint, family stuff and work stuff was taking up too much time to re-enlist, so to speak, several years ago, and said that as soon as those responsibilities went away, that I would be back looking to become re-involved with the operation of the Finance Committee. And that's what's happened. I finished working in April, or getting paid to work in April. I think I'm doing more now than I did then. But it's time to come back and harass you people.
That's what we have Barry on the committee for, Skip.
Yeah.
Sorry,
But
Barry.
that's, yeah, I mean, I've been there, done that, plenty of experience doing it, and have worked out, yeah, and also, you know, working up at Nelson Park or being a trustee up at Nelson Park for an extended period of time just gives me a good experience in operation of the town from many different seats. Would like to come back and work on the Finance Committee.
Thank you for that opening. Are there any questions that people want to ask Skip? Go ahead, Irene.
Skip, can you give me a little bit about your what boards or other town functions are you currently involved with? And then give me a little bit of your background that you think would be valuable in terms, other than having served on Finance Committee in the past, but what else in your background makes you a good candidate for being somebody on Finance Committee?
Well, I was a member of the fire department from 1977 until 2015 or 16, 38 years, whatever it is. I served on the Board of Health for 11 or 12 years. I've been on the Nelson Trust, or a trustee on the Nelson Trust, whatever you want to call it, for I don't even know how long, probably 10 or 12 years there. As far as work goes, I did claims work for insurance and underwriting work for insurance, consultant for countrywide issues with a large property and casualty insurance company. Just the general experience that I've had through life. I think that the experience I had as a member of the Finance Committee makes me a good candidate to become more experienced.
Barry?
Yeah, Skip, what changes would you recommend to enhance the performance of the Finance Committee?
Well, I think I'd have to go back to a certificate that I received from the Finance Committee the first time that I worked, and it said So I'm not sure about how the last line exactly read, but my easy way to the operation of the finance committee, the short abridged version is only 500 pages long. I have only watched a few of the meetings. It doesn't seem to have substantially changed. I think one of the big things is to get or reestablish a relationship with the administration of the town. That's pretty much what I would like to see happen, and it seems as though it is happening, sitting here and listening to you guys talk, listening to Evan talk. It seems as though information is being made more readily available, and that's good to see. It takes some of the stress out of having to make decisions in what might be perceived as being a little bit more in the dark.
Okay,
Barry, any follow-up on that?
no, I'm fine.
No, go ahead, go Paul.
Skip, would you continue to be part of Nelson being a trustee of Nelson if you joined the finance committee?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I was last time I was on it.
Okay.
Any other questions? Skip, is there any final comment you want to make before we move on to the next candidate?
Nope. Nope. Just appreciate your consideration and time and all the crazy hours that you spend doing what you're doing.
Thank you. You know, this is our first time interviewing for appointments, so we're sort of flying by the seat of our pants, trying to make sure we don't mess this up. So thank you for being our first guinea pig.
It is difficult. I've sat and done the same thing as you guys are doing now to replace people in the absence of any clear-cut direction. And, you know, hopefully for you, this will be the only time you have to do it.
Thank you. Barry.
Okay, a technical question. If we identify something as a debt exclusion, do we have to pay that debt?
Are you asking me a Three Stooges question?
No.
If that's a bad debt, you're not going to pay it?
No, not a bad debt.
Yes, you do have to pay the debts.
Yes.
Exclusions.
Yes. Okay.
Barry, you're too much. Anything else?
Thank God I got in before these technical questions.
Thank you very much, Skip. We appreciate your time. Next on the agenda is Greg Marr. Greg, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thanks for having me.
Why don't you start off by telling us a little bit about yourself, and then we will ask you different questions since you heard the same questions already. So I'm sure you have your answers all planned if we did. So go ahead, Greg. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I've been a resident of Grafton for coming up on 23 years now. I'm originally from Western Massachusetts. I am an engineer by training and computer science by profession. So I have degrees in mechanical engineering and computer science. So lots of numbers involved. I've been involved in Boy Scouts since I was 8 years old. I've been involved with the Troop 107 here since 1999. And so most of my volunteering time has been at the Boy Scout level, Girl Scout level. I'm also involved with Girl Scouts, having 2 daughters, one of whom is soon be aging out. More recently, I've been more involved in how town finances are going, especially with all of the override talk recently. I've been learning a lot about how Proposition 2.5 works and all of that. I joined the CIPC this last year during the COVID time. This summer, they were looking for volunteers to help clean up at the elections. So I worked on that and found out that there was a need for more election workers. So I've volunteered as election worker and now going to be a warden for Precinct 2 going forward. So I recently took on that position.
Okay, thank you for that. Any questions for Greg? Go ahead, Barry.
So Greg,
Yeah.
that is a great space behind you. That is-
I've done some renovation during COVID. Yeah.
Yeah. What changes would you recommend to enhance Finance Committee's performance?
The biggest thing I noticed over the last year was the need for more communication with the town administration, as Skip mentioned, cultivating a good working relationship with the town administrator, the town finance, the school committee and school department. And I'm pleased to see that that has been going on. Well, I like to see the committee working together with the town administration to present meaningful and appropriate feedback to the voters, and promoting more involvement from the town people in the finance process. I think I've seen a lot of people talking about that they don't know where all the money goes, and how our taxes are so expensive and we don't get anything out of it. And I think we need to encourage people to attend more of these meetings and find out that information. I know that's going to be something difficult to get people to do, but that's what I think would be good for the town.
Barry, did you have a follow-up?
No, that's it.
Go ahead, Irene.
So kind of further along those lines, Greg, why don't you tell us what you believe to be the role of the Finance Committee?
I believe the role is primarily looking at the budget, examining the budget, trying to make recommendations to the townspeople on good financial practices, working with the different department heads to make sure that their budgets are providing accurate representations of what's needed, so that the voters can be well informed when it comes to town meeting and understanding what voting on and what's needed for the future.
Irene, do you have a follow-up? Oh, okay. Go, Paul.
Greg, what are your thoughts of town's financial situation?
Well, after having just gone through an override, I think we really need to take a hard look at the budget and see where there are things that some inefficiencies that can be cleaned up by different departments not working together. I think bringing in more business revenue is a big thing. I always see us we're 90% of our income comes from residential taxpayers. And I compare that to other towns around and see some of them more like 35 or 40% of their finances comes from businesses. And like, we don't have Route 9 going through our town. We don't have 146 going through our town, which are big commercial and business corridors. So finding ways to attract more commercial revenue in town and promoting that, and not shutting down that revenue just because we don't like where it is or personally wouldn't use the services provided.
Barry, you still have your hand up. Did you have another question?
Yeah, I'm being challenged to ask a technical question.
Okay.
What is UGA?
Say that again.
What is UGA? UGA.
Fortunately, that is not a term that I have heard before. At least not in that form.
Unrestricted general government aid.
Okay,
That's our
so
cherry
that,
sheet money.
yeah, so haven't heard that particular term, but it sounds like the state aid that is provided to us that does not have a particular use attached to it, unlike the Chapter 70 aid, which is
Direct to
has
schools.
more restriction on it. Yeah.
So Greg, Barry, did you have anything else?
No, okay, let me try to get.
So Greg, I have a question, and this is something that came up last year or the year before last when Matt was on the finance committee. Matt Upton and his wife was on the school committee, and people kept asking questions isn't there a conflict with having the having, one person on one board and one person on the finance committee, and the finance committee has to review the school budget. Do you see that as a conflict or an issue for you?
I actually had a rather detailed discussion with the Ethics Commission recently, partially when I was appointed warden or asked to become a warden for that. I talked to them about different positions in town, and that's actually how we found out that CIPC was not on the special municipal employee list. And we did talk about potential position on the finance committee and how that didn't feel there would be any conflict of interest on between the two of us having the different positions on the committee any more than it would just being a resident of the town that has children in the schools.
Excellent. That's a good answer, because obviously I didn't think there was a conflict before, but I know somebody may bring that up, and I just wanted to put that out there so that you can answer that. So thank you.
It was actually brought up when I was appointed to CIPC as well. So
Amy's causing you a lot of problems. You want to? No, I'm just kidding. I'm still upset with Amy for giving me such a hard time because I can't count to 30. So I haven't forgiven her for that.
Just be careful, Mark. She's listening in.
I know, that's why I said it.
funny, I didn't
Anything
hear
else?
her laugh from the other room.
Yeah. Anything else for Greg? Thank you very, very much, Greg. Appreciate your interest. Appreciate you being here.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Yep. So thank you very, very much. So next is Angelina Correa. So Angelina, welcome. Thank you for being here with us this morning. So I'm sure this is not going to come as a shock to you. We're going to follow the same process. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why you want to be on the finance committee?
So I've been in Grafton for 17 years in April. I have 3 kids in the school system. And my background is in accounting. I have a bachelor's from Bentley, where I also worked in the budget office for 5 years while I was going there. I'm currently enrolled at UConn, and I'm going for my master's in accounting and my CPA. So I got exposed to the town finances through the Grafton Sustainability Commission when I was told about that opportunity, and it was eye-opening to say the least, because I was involved with the first override kind of peripherally. Like at the end, I really got more involved, and then with the second override, knowing what I found out from the Sustainability Commission, I was more for it than I was even for the last. And the position that our town is in is not unique, but it's certainly challenging. And when I worked in the budget office, I was the primary go-between between the manager and the different area managers. So I spent a lot of my time explaining to non-financial people complicated financial things. So I think that a big part of this is explaining to people where we're at, to people who don't do finances for a living, who don't really understand this stuff. And I think that I can bring some expertise in that area. Yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to a new town administrator and working with him and just really seeing, what we can do to move forward from where we are at this point.
Excellent. Thank you, Angelina. Barry.
Yeah, my understanding is the CPA exam, 20% of the questions are on municipal accounting as opposed to GASB, FASB, I forget them.
Yeah, I haven't started yet. I'm in my first 2 courses now at UConn, and it's been a hot minute since I've been in school. So I wanted to take it slow and see how it went. I actually applied for the finance committee opening in the fall. And then it was clear that the kids were going to be home, and I was thinking about starting the degree then. And so, and plus I hadn't heard, so I just kind of backed away from it because I wasn't sure about the time commitment with school and the kids. But now they're back in school full time. So, and I can see, you know, how the master's is going to go and how to divide up my time.
Anything else, Barry?
Yeah, what changes would you recommend to enhance the finance committee's performance?
So, I mean, I think that we're on the right track moving towards more communication. I think that 2 overrides in 5 years has gotten people's attention. You know, I talk to people who are generally pretty well informed, who don't really understand why we keep ending up in this situation. And I know that Mark touched on that too, but it's a problem. Like and that's part of what we're doing with the sustainability committee as well, is trying to help people to understand the situation that our town is in fiscally. So I think just continued, you know, communication and making the information accessible to town residents as much as we can, in a way that they're going to be able to digest the information and get something out of it, instead of being confused about why we are where we are.
So you work on the sustainability committee. You've had to reach out to other municipalities to get information, and I know some of that has been frustrating. As a member of the finance committee, what would you recommend we could do to make sure that we have more information out there? You know, one of the things you said is explaining stuff to people that aren't intimately involved in this. How would you go about doing that? Does that make sense? Is that a legitimate question, or did I just babble on?
No, I think so. It's tough because when I've had this conversation with people, you know, we go back to, well, did you watch the meeting? Did you see what's going on? And generally people aren't watching meetings. So I think maybe utilizing the website more for posting information as things are happening. You know, possibly using Facebook for getting information out to people. I know that that's kind of a gray area for this kind of thing, but people are online all of the time and they're not really watching meetings as much as we don't like that. They're not. So it's kind of finding them where they are to communicate information and putting the information out so that it's accessible when they go looking for it.
Okay, excellent. Any other questions for Angelina? Barry, you going to ask her any words or symbols or anything that she needs to know?
Come on, Mark.
Because Andy and I would have flunked the test because I didn't know what you was either. Anything else? All right, Angelina, thank you for being here. We appreciate your interest. One of the things that I hope the public, that when they watch this meeting, is one of the reasons that this committee wanted a change in the way that finance committee members are appointed is we wanted it to be a public process where you would have to interview the applicants, where the public can see the thought process and everything going into the appointment process. And just doing this today gives the public a chance to see why we did what we did, because, you know, we had a chance to meet 3 great candidates. We had a chance to ask them questions, and now we're going to have to deliberate and make a decision on who to appoint. So I'm expecting 2 members to resign right now so that we can appoint all 3 of them. So we don't have to make, nobody finds me funny. I'm the only one that finds me funny. So are there, how do you guys want to go about doing this? This is the first time we've done it and probably the only time we're going to do it. So how would you like to go about doing this? Go ahead, Dan.
I just wanted to say, so 2 things. First, I totally agree with the point you were making with the joke, is that, you know, if we had 3 vacancies, I would be very happy to have, you know, these 3 candidates to appoint. I think there's whatever happens, we're going to end up with 2 great candidates getting turned away, which is, you know, hard to accept. But the second point, though, is for the procedure. I think it might be simpler, more straightforward if instead of somebody just making a motion for a specific individual, that we just do like a straw poll with, names and figure out who has, after we do, any discussion or anything, the support, and then just make one motion for that person.
Okay, I think that makes sense. So I'll go first.
Mark, I have a
Go ahead, go, Paul.
Is this a public vote?
Say that one more time.
Is the selection public selection?
Absolutely. Everything we
Okay.
do is in public.
Okay.
So what we say now, we have the 3 candidates watching us. The public is going to watch it later. So everything we do now is in public, and the vote will be by roll call in public. So there's no secrecy to this. This is the main reason I wanted to have an open process. So I'm really excited that we have 3 applicants and we're doing this, because this is exactly why we're doing what we're doing. So I'll go first. I really wish we could appoint all 3. I've worked with Skip on the finance committee previously. I've worked with Angelina on the Grafton Sustainability Committee, and I get hammered with questions from Greg all the time about process, wanting to know how we make these decisions and what this is and what that is, and a lot of research. All 3 of these candidates bring an unbelievable amount of experience and would be great additions to the finance committee. That said, I've worked the closest with Angelina on the Grafton Sustainability Committee. She's been a very good member of that committee. She's done a lot of work on that committee. She has done unbelievable research and helped put our presentation together. As a matter of fact, she made part of the presentation that we made to the select board a couple of weeks ago. So, based on my experience working with her, I know she would be a great addition to the finance committee. And if you ask me to pick between the 3 of them, I would lean towards Angelina at this point. So Barry, why don't you go next?
Oh, great. I was hoping to go last and it would be obvious who was going to get it. I'm going to echo. I've worked with Skip. He was on the finance committee early in my tenure. And I've also worked with Angelina, who really stepped up on the school side of gathering the data. And I've watched Greg in the background for some of the school committee things and some of the other meetings that have been going on. I'm going to lean towards somebody who has an expertise, and I'm not sure that we have, which is the true accounting side. And if you're going for your CPA, you're going to need to pick up the municipal accounting. I keep getting GASB and FASB mixed up. So I would lean toward Angelina.
Going next, Andy. By the way, I'm just going in the order as you're on my screen, so there's no rhyme or reason to how I'm going. Andy.
Yeah, I'm with Barry in that I didn't want to go next. I'm going to be, completely honest, and I don't know, you stop me if this is an inappropriate question, but are any of you eligible for the Precinct 1 designation? Any of our candidates?
I am. I think we live in Precinct 1 up here.
Why, are you thinking of resigning, Andy?
It's a tough thing. No, I would not do so happily, but it's one of those things that I'm honestly trying to decide if I want the best candidates for the town. I want the best people, in place for the town, and I'm trying to measure myself up against the 3 of them.
I'm going to stop you right there. You're being completely inappropriate, and I completely disagree with where you're headed. You have been on the finance committee now for less than a year. You have stepped up and you have asked all the questions that you need to ask. You are meeting with department heads. You're spending time learning the school budget, and you're bringing a lot of, I think you're going to be a great candidate, a great member of this committee. So stop right there. You're not going anywhere. All right. I'm putting it into.
As a non-party to that discussion, I would echo Mark's sentiments. If you jumped into this job and you've done it for a year, don't think that you're inadequate at all. Stay and do it. Don't be silly.
Dan.
Yeah, I just wanted to add another piece to that. if it were just about, people having the most experience, I think it would be really obvious. It would be Skip. I think it's for this committee, it's important to have a balance of people who have been doing this for a long time, people who are new to it, people who bring a different perspective. And I think that's what makes this so hard, is that we have 3 candidates who are not, they're not all apples. We're comparing some apples, some oranges, and it's that's what makes it hard. But I think it's good to have people who are newer and who are still early in the learning curve. We're not going to have, we'll run out of skips if we only have skips on all of our committees.
I agree 100%. So that being said, Andy, you're not going anywhere. Is there anything you want to add?
We will vote to reject your resignation.
Absolutely. That goes without saying.
Thank you. I'm humbled by the kind words. I didn't mean to, open a bee's nest here or anything. But I do think we have 3 exceptionally qualified people. Going, I guess, on a similar bias, I have more experience working and talking to Greg than I do the other candidates, and I think all of them are fantastic. I'm continually in awe of Greg's analytical mind and his ability to retain information. So I'd be leaning towards Greg.
Thank you. Sue Robbins?
I agree, everybody, that these 3 are excellent candidates for us, and we're really fortunate to have people who are interested. I'm leaning toward Greg because I have been working with him on CIPC. I've never seen, he's been brilliant. I've never seen anybody who can quote the charter to me in 2 seconds. He also knows the bylaws. When he explains things, he does it in such a clear and concise fashion. It's factual. I've enjoyed working with him so much, and so I'm Greg. I'm for Greg.
Understood. Irene?
Okay, so at the risk of being very repetitive, yeah, this is a hard choice. I am leaning towards Greg, and in part, not only because of all the things that have already been said, I think we all know what he brings to the table in terms of critical thinking, analytical reasoning, background, etc. But the fact that Greg has attended so many of our meetings over at least the last year, he's always on the list of attendees. That shows me somebody that is very interested, and he had actually applied for one of the openings back last June. So I know that this is somebody who really wants to do this. I definitely lean towards Greg.
Heather?
Well, first, Barry, I am a CPA, so there you go. You do have somebody on. So having said that, I actually am leaning towards Angelina, only because I really do think I'd like someone else. Not that no one else has any number background, but it is nice to have somebody with a similar background, understanding of the financials, the budgets, and all that goes with it. I also think that once she gets into the class for the GASB, Barry, the government municipality, who knows? We might be a case study. Who knows? But it'll be nice to sort of see if there is anything new and different out there that she can bring to the town. I also think, I know Skip and Greg both are involved with the town already. So I think it would be nice, they're on the CIPC and Nelson Library. So I think it would be nice for Angelina just to get into this committee. And so then, we're spreading our 3 great candidates out. So that would be my choice, Angelina.
Thank you. Dan Kusher?
I didn't have my hand raised. Are you?
No, you're next.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I'm leaning toward Angelina. It's, yeah, I just think the having another person with that professional financial perspective, I think is good. I think the leaning, I think, is the most important word in there. Is that it's just if Angelina weren't here, I feel like I'd be like, all right, we have two great candidates and I just don't know who to pick. So it's yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
It's hard.
Thank you, Dan. Last but not least, go Paul.
What happens if there is a tie, Mark?
Yeah, I don't know. There's 8 of us. There's bound to be a tie because right now there are 4 preferences for Angelina, 3 preferences for Greg. If you say Greg, then we have 4-4, and I have no idea what we will do. We will just have to figure that out. So, go Paul.
It's really difficult. The thing is, first of all, I want to thank all the 3 of you for the services that you have rendered and continue to render to the town, because I'm just reflecting on the post that there are hardly anybody who has applied for the select board position, I think, and there's a lot of people who say that our government needs to get better. So I appreciate all of your efforts. I'm going to go with Angelina, so that would be my vote.
Okay. So based on that, and Dan, I'm glad you said to do it the way that you said to do it, because that allowed us to go through the process. This isn't easy. I wish we could appoint all 3 of them to the committee. I was torn between Greg and Angelina a lot, because I agree with what Irene said. Greg does come to all the meetings, and I get messages from Greg all the time asking questions. He wants to know. So it's I wish we had 3 spots open right now. But that said, it appears that there are 5 people leaning towards Angelina, 3 towards Greg. So I would entertain a motion to appoint Angelina Correa to the Finance Committee. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor by roll. Barry, you have your hand up.
Oh, I was going to suggest that both Greg and Skip consider running for the upcoming select board position. Ed Brisby is going to move on. We could really use somebody top-notch sharp to take that seat.
Thanks, but unfortunately, I can't do that and be warden at the same time. So.
Yeah, that's true. It's a lot.
You don't want to count your own votes, Greg?
No.
Anything else? Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor by roll call vote. And by the way, this term fills an unexpired term that would take us through 2021. And so there are 3 positions that would be up for reappointment this year. And this is one of the 3 that would be up for reappointment. So Angelina, this would give you an opportunity to resign very quickly if you don't like what's going on here. So by roll call vote, Barry?
Aye.
Andy?
Aye.
Sue?
Aye.
Irene?
Aye.
Heather?
Aye.
Dan?
Aye.
Go Paul?
Aye.
Mark, aye. That makes it unanimous. Angelina, welcome to the Finance Committee. We'll send a letter. Sue Fiacco, we need to send a letter to the town clerk notifying her of this appointment. And Angelina, if you get a chance between now and next Saturday, please get sworn in so that you can attend next Saturday's Finance Committee meeting. We're meeting Saturday morning, beginning at 8:30. So we hope to see you there. And I think that's it. Is there anything else we need to cover? I guess, Evan, we'll look forward to getting any budget update from you prior to next Saturday's meeting. And I'm sure Sue will get that out to all of us. I thank you all this was a long meeting, and I thank you all. I think it was a very good meeting. We covered a lot of ground. One of the things that I'm going to do, since I brought that up this morning, I'm going to reach out to Beth over at the library and let her know that I had raised that concern and that we're going to try to invite her back into an upcoming meeting. I don't want her to be caught off guard, and I wasn't trying to be critical. I was just trying to ask a question this morning to try to figure that out. So we'll figure that out. We'll figure that out from here. So that's it. Unless there's
Mark?
anything else, go ahead, Irene. Go ahead, Irene.
It just, on our agenda, it says review of the transfer from the reserve fund.
Oh,
Do we
you're
need
right.
to do
Thank
that
you.
or
No,
not?
no, thank you. That's right. Evan signed it and submitted it. So do we need to vote that, Sue?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so I would entertain a motion to approve the reserve fund transfer for Sue's, this is for your overtime hours, correct?
It is.
And the amount is how much?
$3,200, 150 hours.
Thank you.
So moved.
I'd entertain a motion to approve. Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor by roll call, Barry,
Aye.
Andy.
Aye.
Sue,
Aye.
Irene,
Aye.
Heather,
Aye.
Dan,
Aye.
go Paul.
Aye.
Mark, aye, makes it unanimous. Anything else? Thank you, Irene, I forgot about that. Thank you for keeping me on the straight and narrow. Go ahead, Sue Robbins.
I just wanted to remind Angelina, congratulations, and don't forget to go get sworn in so you can vote by Saturday.
I will. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
All right. That being said, thank you to everybody. I'll call us adjourned and we'll see you all Saturday, the 20th at 8:30.